everybody. Welcome to Frame Trap. On this episode, I am joined by Ian Hink.
Hi.
And Daniel Bloodworth.
Hello.
I will be your host, Ben Moore. Next week is Thanksgiving. There's not a Frame Trap next week. Wait. No, there is. It's Early Access Saturday, Public Monday. So there will be a Frame Trap on Thanksgiving week. I always feel obligated, I feel like, to ask this question this time of year. What are you thankful for?
Oh, wow.
I don't understand the question.
All right.
I'm thankful that we are still here, so thank you, patrons.
Yeah. Thankful that.
Thank
for that.
you for small business loans. And
the way that you choose that blood, I so wish that was alcohol. Like it was just like a giant mug of ale. Like we're still here. Thanks.
I guess the PS5 and Demon Souls is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. I finished Demon Souls yesterday, and now I'm sad because I just want to keep playing. And I mean, I can, but
you got to keep playing it.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's just the answer.
Right. Well,
I've got 4 and 1.
Have you gotten through Spider-Man yet? Because I mentioned to get Spider-Man. I just want to do one thing at a time.
I haven't. Here's the awkward thing about Spider-Man. So, my wife really wants to play Spider-Man with me. And we just haven't had time to sync up. And so I've definitely had time to play it while she's, sleeping. But I can't do that. I can't just rob her of that experience. So that's the main reason why I haven't started it yet. But I'm definitely thankful that not only that we have a job, but that it's this job, which is extremely fortunate. And also my cats. It's amazing how much my life has improved just having these 2 little fuzzballs around. But yeah, do you guys have any Thanksgiving plans?
I'm trying to figure out pre-ordering at Denny's, but
that's
they
just
do not like our credit cards.
That phrase.
The fact that it's Denny's is so funny to me.
Well, they have pre-orders open, so that makes it easy. So.
I know pre-order is used for other things besides video games. But I only really associate it with video games. And so you saying pre-ordering at Denny's makes me think like there's a Denny's video game or something.
Do you get any pre-order exclusive bonuses for pre-ordering at Denny's?
Well, I don't know about pre-order exclusive, but there's just stuff on the menu that's not normally on the menu, like pecan pie.
Love a good pecan pie. I don't have any plans.
That delay made that beautiful. Love a good pecan pie. No plans.
No plans.
Well, Ian, you already said you were thankful for it. Let's go ahead and talk about Demon Souls. Review copy provided by PlayStation.
Bulk of the episode right here.
Bulk
baby.
of the episode. Full frame trap taken care of.
Spoiler mode frame trap.
Spoiler mode frame trap.
It's great. I've got, like I said, I've got Worlds 4 and 1 left to finish, and then I'm done.
Nice. 4 is pretty straightforward, I feel like, so.
Pretty straightforward.
Ooh.
Right now, I had been in 4 a lot, trying to farm for damn pure Bladestone.
What are you upgrading? The Falchion?
The Uji-Katana.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah, man, that drop rate still pretty hardcore. Like they said, they made it less absurd, but woof! I've killed that black skeleton so many times. But it's also the best soul farming location, so it's kind of I mean, there's no real. I'm not complaining really. But yeah, now I'm trying to do 4-2 in earnest, and boy, those laser beam guys hit like a truck.
They do, yeah.
If I get hit by that laser beam, I'm just dead.
Yeah, because you're doing a pretty glass cannon build, right? Where like if you get touched, you're in danger.
Yeah, pretty much. If I get hit at all, I'm pretty much dead.
I did a very tanky build where I did like a lot of endurance, a lot of strength.
I think I've upgraded my vitality like twice.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I
it's at like 19. So
spent most of the game using the meat cleaver, which is just a super fun weapon. I'm just addicted to giant ass swords, but it was too slow at a certain point until I realized how broken you have to wield it with 2 hands, but then you roll and hit light attack, and it does a quick downward pound. And like that move on its own can beat the entire game. It's fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Because it comes out so quickly that you kind of counteract the slowness of the weapon, which is its biggest downside, but you keep the big damage. Like, you do just as much damage as you do with like other attacks, or very close to. And so that thing came in super clutch. Blood, I know you've been playing Demon Souls as well. What's your build?
Time.
What are you doing? First time.
Yeah, never
first
played
time
the
ever.
original.
Wow.
This is juicy. Where are you at? How you feeling about it?
So I'm in Latria. I just finished the prison and I'm wandering around by the giant brain thing, whatever the heck it is. And
the heart. Yeah.
Yeah, and the obviously after Tower Knight I couldn't go forward in World 1.
Right.
But did all of 2. And yeah, I've been enjoying it. It's definitely interesting to see, how much it is essentially Dark Souls, where it's like, Bloodborne and Sekiro are like very distinctly different in terms of their systems, whereas Demon Souls is like, Dark Souls is just straight up sequel, like in terms of all of the systems and how things works. There are differences for sure, but in terms of how, weapon scaling and even what kinds of weapons you get and what spells you get. And so it's just a matter of, sort of refreshing yourself on how some of those nuances work with terms of weapon scaling and all of that.
It becomes very apparent that Dark Souls was just like, we can't use this name anymore because Atlas isn't publishing this one. But it's like, definitely a pretty direct continuation.
Because Demon Souls was my first one, and it's weird going back to it now because there are just things where you're like, oh, wait, I can't jump. Oh, wait, there's no downward attack. Like, just things that you've become.
That killed me once.
Yeah, definitely. There was a time where I was doing it, and I was like, wait, what? I'm pretty sure. Oh, yeah. And then Brad was like, no, there's no.
That's probably why there's that tutorial with the first boss in Dark Souls, right? It's like, hey, look, you can do this now.
Yeah.
New thing.
Yeah.
I played Demons. I think I'd played Dark Souls 1 and 2. And maybe Bloodborne? I can't remember. I think it was after Dark Souls 2 when I played Demon Souls the first time. And like it was back, I think the servers were about to shut down. And they hadn't quite yet. But it was a lot of fun.
Ian, I didn't think of this until I was kind of knee deep in Demon Souls, but I remember going over to your apartment and you were stuck on Maneater and we were trying to get through Maneater on your save file.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was a long, this was years and years and years ago.
That seems crazy to me. Yeah. I don't remember doing that.
But
That's funny.
in Dark Souls 1 and 3, I was Pyro, and so I went Magician for Demon Souls. But I've got my big Fireball now, as well as Soul Ray.
Did you get literal Fireball?
Yeah, like
instead of Firestorm?
Yeah, the larger Fireball, yeah.
Yeah, I went with Firestorm.
Yeah, Firestorm I remember from, you said Total Crap?
Holy crap.
Holy crap.
It's bonkers.
Yeah.
In the right scenarios, like farming that black skeleton, I just walk to the bottom of the hallway. As soon as he starts moving, I hit Firestorm. He just walks into it and dies, and I'm like, well, there's one run of that.
Yeah, I'm experienced with that spell, and from the other games. But it's not necessarily my favorite because it can be a little weird and random and hard to hit sometimes.
It's definitely very random.
But and then in terms of weapons, I'm still kind of experimenting with different things. I've gotten the big spear from the Phalanx, and that served me pretty well.
Spears are very good. Yeah.
Gotten like a Mercury Poison Rapier. I've got a fully upgraded Dragon Sword, and then the Crushing Battle Axe and stuff. So I'm still not entirely sure like whether I'll favor Dex or Strength more in terms of my weapons. They're kind of even right now. But
that's the nice thing with knowing my preferred playstyle, I guess, going in. Because it was like, I was Crescent Falchion until I got my dex high enough that the Uchikatana outstripped it.
Have you, in comparison to other From games, since this is your first time going through, how have you found the challenge?
I found the challenge all right. Sometimes it gets a little weird. Like I was talking to Ian about the Dragon God boss and like how that's more of like it's like a cinematic experience rather than a boss fight.
Right.
And just like I did not understand what it was trying to get me to do, so I looked it up, and then I was still okay, just trying to figure out, when you can and can't be seen by the boss. And
it took me a second to realize that you could attack the pillars and crush, because I was just baiting his attacks to the first couple of runs to try to get through, and then I was like, wait, I can just hit these. And it made it way easier.
Yeah, but
that boss fight kind of sucks.
Yeah. But some of the things, it's funny because some of the things that like I've had more struggle with, like it took me a few tries to get Tower Knight figured out.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really, I didn't know the tricks and all of that. Like I had knocked him over by accident one time. I'm like, how did that happen? And then I talked to Brad about it afterwards. But then I saw you guys do Flame Lurker on the stream, and so I kind of had a good idea of how he worked, and then like, okay, yeah, I can't just walk behind this dude. He's just gonna jump back on top of me. Mm-hmm. So I just kept my distance and had all of, and I knew to have all of my fire resistant stuff ready to go, and kept it ranged, and I got him on the first try. So
nice.
That was nice.
That's the funny thing with this game is like, especially if you're more of a Souls veteran or whatever, like I think I definitely killed every one, like every -1 boss first try, and like half of the -2 bosses first try, maybe second try. And it's kind of funny because I sort of take it for granted, because I was like, man, this game, I don't remember this game being so easy. But then you have to remember, like, well, you've already played this game, and you've played every other Souls game like 100 times. So like probably that has something to do with it, because I was watching my roommate play, and like he was struggling on like some of the earlier bosses, and I was like, oh yeah, right, that was me back when I was starting out too.
Demon Souls is definitely a very wild game in my opinion, and revisiting it feels a little bit more patched together than I was expecting, and I think they just kind of throw everything at the wall, and sometimes that really works out. Like they have some crazy ideas in this game. Yeah. Like the dragon boss that you were mentioning, like maybe not the best executed thing, but kind of a crazy idea. And then the PvP boss, and then like Maiden Astrea, like they really went out there in terms of design. And I think that creates incredible high points, and definitely moments where I was like, okay, I don't think I can defend this. Like, I think this is just bad. And Maneater, actually, Blood, I don't know if you've fought that boss yet, but I was just like, I really don't think this is Salt. Like, I genuinely just think this AI is bad, because like it just freaked out on me multiple times, where like the way that it works is you're fighting this one creature, and then a copy of him appears, and you're on this very narrow bridge, and the idea of it is pretty cool, where it's like you're 2-on-1. Like this thing is like pretty formidable just on its own, but fighting two of them at the same time, and the thought of instant death, like being right there, like if you just roll incorrectly, you're gone. But the way that the AI works is really weird. Multiple times I would have like the guy, one of the man-eaters, freak out, and he would like fly up to the right, then fly in the same spot, then fly up to the right, then fly up to the same spot. Like it was just like broken. And sometimes when they dash, they like land in the air in a way that doesn't make any sense. And one time, it was actually a really good run that I had of this boss. They flew up into the sky, and then he just flew up in the like he just kept going like to the north, and he just kept getting higher and higher and higher and higher, and he stood floating there just like this. And I was a pure melee build, so I didn't have anything. I had no bow to use against him, nothing, no magic. And so like I was pretty sure, like, man, I think I had it this run, and I just had to go back to the Nexus, because
that sucks.
yeah. And there are other things as well. I think a couple of the boss runs are like kind of tedious in a way that they don't need to be. Like when you go up to Old Monk, you have to fight repeatedly like two black phantoms, and it's just like
that's the worst. And there's the unskippable cutscene that like I know is there to cover the loading in of the other player, but like that part is awful. Mm-hmm. it was really funny because I was playing Old Monk last night, and I was chatting with my friends Pam and Chris, and Pam is going through the game as well. And the texts I had sent were really funny. I looked back at them, and it was just like, Old Monk is trash. And then I was like, long run up, Black Phantoms, unskippable cutscene, terrible.
Yep.
And then it was just beat Old Monk, lol.
Yeah.
So it's like
it.
Yeah.
There are definite low points like that. Like, but it's funny, Ian, because you and I were talking about it on the stream, about how shitty 5.2 is, where it's just kind of like this open swamp.
Yeah.
But when I actually got to 5.2, I
don't hate it.
I ended up loving it. Like, and
Yeah.
and I do think the ambition of this game still really shines through, and you do have moments that feel kind of rough, but how different all of those worlds are.
Yeah.
And just all of the ideas crammed into this game, like for being in an 11-year-old game, I was like enchanted by it. And of course, this game is like gorgeous. I think unquestionably,
Beautiful.
one of, if not the best looking next gen game out there.
I mean, and as far as Souls games go, this one's always maybe had my favorite atmosphere. Like I think about 4, it's just so like that rainy. I mean, I'm partial to that kind of rainy atmosphere anyway, but I just love the way it looks. But yeah, it is really funny comparing this game to the other Souls games, because several of the bosses in this, I would say, are pretty kind of whatever.
Yeah.
Like Adjudicator, Leechmonger, like the spider, even like you can kind of just like sit there and wail on them.
And like I forget the name of it. The Blind Warrior.
I can't remember his name either.
He's pretty bad too, because I was like, oh, like it's kind of a cool idea. It's like this warrior who can't see. But then I was just like, you put on Thief's Ring, and I just felt like I could walk behind him the whole time and just chip. And there were several bosses like that.
Good to know. I haven't gotten to him yet.
The Leech Monster.
Leech Monster is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, like that, and this I think speaks to an issue in this game that they definitely addressed in later games. And I know Bloodworth, you sympathize with this through how you talked about Bloodborne, but like, if you have enough grass and enough like lotus items, you're essentially invincible. Like you can go into the boss, and if you just have enough grass, you can tank anything. Even my build, who's like you said, more of a glass cannon, like I don't have that many hit points, but like if I've got enough grass and can just get out of the way, you can't it's hard to fail sometimes.
Yeah, there's definitely that sense of tension you get out of being on your last Estus. Yeah, that you lose in this. And Dark Souls 2 had the gems, right? So that you could kind of bypass that.
Dark Souls 2 is kind of a combination of Demon Souls and Dark Souls in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I'm not necessarily complaining. Like, I'm not against it, but it is kind of a funny thing design-wise. It's one of the many things that you see that they were trying out in this and liked, and then just totally refined for the later games. And that extends even to like level design, level theming. Like every one of their games has a freaking Blight Town basically. And it's just like they just fell in love with that idea in Demon Souls and just kept on doing it. It's just like, all right, guys.
I think two of the most egregious examples are just the like you running around in the muck. They love that all the time. And dragons breathing on goddamn bridges. Like they
love that. They love that.
Yeah, absolutely love it.
It is really funny, and I felt it more in this game than in the Souls games, the Dark Souls games, because my build is so 100% dependent on rolling, and this game punishes the hell out of you if you try to roll in that thick muck. Like you have that stuck animation and you're like useless. So like it was a really interesting part of the game. And I mean, because we were streaming and dicking around and just being ridiculous, we ended up cheesing Maiden Estrella anyway, so I didn't really have to contend with it for the boss. But got 3 trophies out of it. But it would have really made me have to reconsider my playstyle, which I do think is kind of cool, that a lot of other Souls games don't always force you to do. You can kind of just pick your style and go for it, which I also like, but it is interesting that
it is fun when you get unexpected trophy pop up. Like I was doing was it called, the Fool's Idol or whatever last
Yeah.
night. And
I actually really like that boss a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I got
Did you not kill the assistant?
Well, you have to kill the guy upstairs, but I didn't kill.
because he'll just res her forever.
Yeah, I didn't kill any of the guys around her, and I got a trophy for that.
Yeah.
So,
I like that area and that boss. Yeah.
We were kind of talking about how bosses are all over the place, and you said you kind of liked that the game necessitates a different approach at points, and I do think that is something that Demon Souls excels in, where the bosses are just kind of so erratic and all over the place in terms of how they fight, that I definitely ran into a situation where I was like, my weapon is just too slow. I need to figure out a way to work around this. And you're absolutely right that climbing that mountain is really, really good. And there's something that I kind of admire about this game where, again, just talking about how many different ideas that there are. Like, so many of these bosses have just some weird idea to them, like, you know, not being able to see, or being more of a like stealth section, or being a PvP battle. It definitely feels like that first game out where it doesn't have the burden of expectation, and like the people making this game didn't have to worry about like, oh, is this gonna create a backlash? Like, it just feels like unfiltered ideas, and I love that. And I think you can't just do that anymore. I think you have to naturally be more refined, and of course that's good, but there's something about just that like wild, we're gonna go for it spirit that I think is just perfect in Demon Souls.
One thing I'll say is, it's, I don't know if I'd say disappointing, but maybe just a little bit predictable, is at least so far, it sort of feels like, you know, with the levels, there's like, okay, it's going to be a section and then a boss, and then a section and then a boss.
Yeah.
And whereas in some of the later games, I feel like I could just stumble across a boss and be like, oh crap, I didn't mean to come in here.
Yeah,
in later games when you have the room that doesn't have the boss fog until you activate the boss, and like they intentionally play you on that sometimes, where there's like a big open room and you're like, oh crap, this is a boss, like I better get my stuff in order, and then you finally prepare your mind and go in and there's just nothing, and you're like, oh, I've been had.
Yeah, I mean, 4 of the 5 places do follow the exact structure where it's one area, a second area, and then you immediately go into a boss. And I agree. I do think that predictability hurts it a little bit. Something to kind of counter that a little bit is there are times where there's a fog door and I'm like, is a boss here? No. Yeah. And I do like that kind of setup for sure.
And I love the messaging system.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, you were talking about how this game feels erratic and how they were like taking weird chances and stuff. And that's one of the things that I love about it. Like, playing it again now, I definitely don't think, and especially like playing the best running and highest graphical fidelity Souls game we've ever played. But having it be their first outing is a very interesting experience, because you're having the cutting edge tech with budding, like, nascent ideas. But that's one of the things that I really respect about this game and love about this game, is because, like, while a lot of it doesn't quite stick the landing, I marvel that they were just willing and crazy enough to go for it. Like, and so many things that they did get right, like the messaging system or the online systems and how co-op and PvP works. And naturally, it's co-op and PvP stuff has been updated now with passwords and stuff, and that wasn't there back then. But like, that theory was already there, and it just works so well. And like, having other players leave you messages, and outside of Fog Door, there's almost always a message that says like, no sign of demons here or something. And I'm just like, thank you, random stranger. And I just love that stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about the schism between kind of the next genness of this game and its old ideas clashing, for sure. Because you'll run into something super janky, like just having loot on a ragdoll body just like fall out of your grasp. And
Fall
you're like,
fuck-
okay,
Yeah.
all right. But then that's countered by like, wow, there are no load times, and this just makes it way more enjoyable to zip around and perfectly suits this kind of segmented structure.
Especially if
that
you're
the game
doing
has.
something like popping between the Nexus and the blacksmith that's in 2-1 and like all of that.
Mhm.
And after you kill your first demon, unlocking the just like not having to go to the Nexus first, and you can just go wherever you want. That's really fun. But yeah, that's something a shout out to Blue Point, Ben. Like your point about items falling off and that happened to me a lot in 3 too. Like Latria, killing a gargoyle and then it just like there goes the thing, and it's like probably didn't need it, but that's something I love about what Blue Point has pulled off here is like they've made a technological masterpiece. I mean, it's crashed a few times for me, but whatever. I didn't lose any progress. But like they kept all the quirks and all the weird little things. Like it feels like, you know how you have a memory, and we say this about remasters all the time. It's like your memory remasters things for you when you're thinking back, because at the time it looked the way this looks to us now.
Your created character doesn't look like ass in this version.
Yeah. But it's just like, I love that they maintain such jank and like, but without it feeling broken or janky.
Right.
It just feels like the spirit of it is still there.
Yeah, I agree. And I am very grateful for that. And I love this as it exists. No question about it. Part of me is curious what okay, we're gonna take some creative liberties and think this could be changed for the better, and maybe like a more heavy-handed approach. I'm just curious to see what would come out of it. And obviously this is way too much to ask, but I would love like a 2 versions where it's like, all right, here we changed a bunch of things and here we pretty much kept it the same, and being able to bounce back and forth.
Well, Fractured mode, kinda. They just kind of mirrored everything, but they did add those ceramic coins, which apparently is how you open that new mystery door.
Is that only in Fractured mode? Because I haven't seen any
yes.
coins. Okay.
The ceramic coins only drop in Fractured mode. In normal game, you can get gold coins from Fat Officials.
But I don't mean just like little additions.
No, but that's
edge.
a little thing.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because a company like Blue Point, how much would be too much? And I think the solution, Ben, the solution would be if they, and I mean, I know everyone's pining for this, but if they and From Software to some degree collaborated on finishing the 6th Archstone, and we got the Northlands, that would be, I think, what you were after, because it would be Blue Point executing on it with From's, kind of direction. How likely that is, I have no idea. Probably not very.
I think that's the right answer. I think that's probably the best case scenario. You're right. I'm sure not everyone will appreciate this, but kind of going back to that sensation of it feeling erratic and just kind of full of ideas and not really limiting itself because there's not the burden of expectation. There is a cruelty to Demon Souls that I feel like is not quite as present in some of especially the later games, where like there are just moments where I'm like laughing, where I'm like, I can't believe you made this decision. Like the giant lava bugs blocking the tunnels and them taking like all day. It's just like, it just feels like a troll in like a great way. It just feels devilish. Or, going up to Maneater and having that Black Phantom there and like having to wait for it to turn around. And it's just like, they have to know what they're doing. Like, and there's so many times where it's just like they hide a dude in the corner and it's like, oh, here we go. And of course there are tricks and traps in all of the From Software games. But I think what I'm saying is there's an aggressiveness here to kind of their... I don't know.
One of the things I was talking to Ian about when you're talking about the lava bugs, you've got these items out in the lava river.
Yes.
And I'm like,
Ian,
like, is there because earlier in the level, there's a place where you turn on the water and you cool the lava off and, and then you can go out and get that stuff. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to be an option this time. And essentially the solution, quote unquote, is to just like, gear up, put all your fire stuff on, hold your shield out, walk across, pick up the item, die,
Yeah.
and then go back for the next item. Put your shield, walk across, pick it up, die.
What?
Until
Which is
you
funny
do that,
because
and every time you have to kill a couple of lava bugs to get to that spot.
They do, without the lava bugs, they do that sort of thing again, especially in Dark Souls 2, where you just have to go for it. You have to put a bunch of items and use a spell or something and just like hope for the best. It's just like, all right.
There was a spot in 1.4 where, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I feel like I looked around pretty thoroughly, where there's an item and it's kind of like in this like indebted spot where it's surrounded by walls, and you drop down in there, and I dropped down in there and I got the item, and it wasn't even anything worthwhile, and I don't think there was any way out. Like, I was just trapped. It's like
no illusory walls or anything?
I don't think so. Again, maybe I missed something and maybe I'm mistaken, but it was just like, you
There's
bastard.
gotta be. Could you kill yourself? Like, wow.
Well, it could be world tendency.
You could.
Too.
I used
like,
it.
Maybe it rises up if it's.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but it was just like a you bastards moment where I was like, I felt completely trapped, and I used an Archstone shard to get back to the Nexus. And maybe there's
Right.
something
I'm just wondering
missing.
if you didn't have any. Like,
Right.
Well,
Right.
you do have the one that's
Correct.
permanent, right? That you lose.
Where
the
you
soul.
forfeit all your souls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I got trolled like that in Latria, where I dropped off a ledge kind of by the bridge with the crossbow machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down and I got an item, and then I was like walking back, and there's a ledge, and I was like, well, crap, how do I get back up? Because in the other games you can't climb over ledges
the
like
vaulting,
that.
the random
Yeah.
vaulting
And
spots.
and then I was like, oh wait, and then I just like walked forward into the ledge and hit like X or something, and I went up over it, and I was like, oh, I was almost gonna jump off this ledge, but
Yeah, maybe I just
Nope.
missed something really simple, but
who knows?
Yeah, I haven't been there yet, so if I spot something, I'll let you know.
it's funny because people definitely note how enthusiastic we are. I mean, pretty much across the board with From Software, and how much we talk about their games. But I felt this with Sekiro last year, and I feel this with the Demon Souls remake now, where it's like we talk about it all the time because it's the best. Like, you know me, I play everything. I love so many games, but From manages to create experiences that just have a hold on me, where
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
like I can't get this sensation anywhere else. This like sense of triumph or experimentation or surprise. Like,
Or just like, something as simple as like getting a new weapon and like seeing what the parry animation
Yeah.
is, like some of
Yeah.
that stuff like with the club is just brutal.
Well, and there's like there are so few games in my estimation that have a similar I guess pedigree that these do in terms of like just pure like commitment to a vision, a solid vision, well executed, respects you, like, and it just plays well, and the story feels active and alive, and
Yep.
like you're a part of deciphering it, which to me is what video games, that's my favorite kind of thing in video games.
Right.
And yeah, so for me, From Software games are pretty much unmatched
it's amazing
in gaming.
how much the story doesn't get in the way. Like, there's so much
Yeah.
there, but you're pretty much free to engage with it to the extent that you want to, and that's incredibly nice.
Which I love, yeah.
But I play games with my wife all the time, and there are moments where we'll be playing something, and I'm like, oh, this is going to happen, or oh, this is the solution to this, or oh, I think this is, and she's like, how do you know that? And it's just like, well, they just keep repeating the same ideas. Like, it's just like, I've seen this enough that I know this is going to happen here. And that doesn't, I mean, it does to some extent, right? Like, we talk about the swamp and the dragon, like, or people being behind corners. You tend to look out for this stuff. But I would say, by and large, when I play these games, even Demon Souls, which I had already played through, there's still a palpable sense of, I don't know what is going to happen, and it feels like anything could happen.
Well, and all like they themselves show an understanding of that kind of concept, because whereas lesser games, for lack of a better phrase, start to feel repetitive, like they're repeating, like, oh, okay, here's a mob of 6 guys, like,
Right.
this is what I have to do, like, here's a guy with ranged attacks, here's what I have to do, gotta mash square on this guy, whatever it is. This one, instead of, like, even when they're repeating their same old tricks, it feels like they're doing it intentionally because they want to keep you on edge and they want to teach you to look out for that sort of thing.
Right.
And so, like, they do, like, a bunch of traps or a guy around a corner enough times that they train you to expect that. So the third or fourth or fifth time where you go into a new area and you look left because there's always a guy, they always put the guy to the left, you know. This time he drops down behind you and you're like, oh crap.
Right.
So then you learn to look out for that. And so they play with it in this in a way that I think is really cool. Like collapsing bridges in Demon Souls for stuff, especially in 2, where like there are a couple of collapsing bridges, so then every bridge you go across, you're super scared it's gonna fall apart for like the rest of the game.
Right.
And I love stuff like that.
Yeah, because it's not just about repetition. It's also about effectiveness. And going back to the dragon, it's like I feel like there's a dragon in every Souls game that's breathing across the bridge. But even though I feel like I've seen that 100 times, doing it in this game, I still had that moment of panic where it was like, am I gonna fucking make it? Right. So it still works. It still has tension because when utilized correctly, it still evokes those feelings or creates that sense of panic. Like it doesn't become so predictable that you don't have any fear.
And the solution is different in
Right.
this game. Like in Dark Souls, in Dark Souls, you have to run up a little ways and hide behind a corner. You know, in this, you just have to go for it. And like that's a subtle difference, but it's a difference,
Yeah.
you know, and it makes a difference.
Demon Souls.
Demon Souls, man.
Check it out. Like seriously, because I think a lot of people, it was kind of encouraging because when this was coming out, so many people were like, "Oh, I didn't play this. You know, I started with Dark Souls," and I think that's true for a lot of people. And so it's really nice to have them experience it and having it feel in a lot of ways like a PlayStation 5 game, but it retaining that essence, and it feels like you're getting that experience. So that's really cool.
I would say some bits of advice for first timers in Blood. I assume you've discovered this kind of for yourself, but like this game works differently than a lot of other games. Like you aren't going to, even other Souls games if you've played those, but like there aren't checkpoints, there aren't bonfires except for after you beat the boss. So the checkpointing system is just shortcuts. So keep your eyes open for that kind of stuff.
Right.
And also you can't level up until you kill Phalanx. You've got to run across the Dragon Bridge to get to Phalanx. So don't, because I forgot how to get to Phalanx and spent like half an hour after I'd killed everyone because I made the assumption, I was like, well, they can't make me go across the fire bridge right now. I couldn't survive that. And then it's like, oh no, that's what I'm supposed to do. And then once you beat Phalanx, go to 4-1, go left after the first fog, and then left, watch out for the black skeleton and the trap. Get that Crescent Falchion, baby. Regenerator ring is there too, which is really useful early game.
It's useful the whole. It's great.
It's useful the whole game.
It's great.
And I was using that sword till very recently, and I've almost beaten the game. So, yeah.
Blood, tell me about Dirt 5.
Dirt 5. Yeah, it's interesting because I kind of like had a weird pre-release thing that happened where the Xbox Series X build wasn't supposed to be available, but I had already been playing it, and then I found out like, oh, actually that's just like the Xbox One build, and it was just like weird. I had a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and like just had to scrap all the footage I had already gotten. So now I'm like, now I'm actually like in it for real. And I'm split on it in some ways. Like in some ways, like I could, like it's a pretty game, and there's a lot that I can appreciate about it. But then I'm also finding things that are just like, this seems odd. Like, it because I know it supports like the 120 hertz TVs and things like that. But it's like even on lower settings, certain tracks, particularly some of the night tracks, the pop-in, the level of detail management is just like unmistakably distracting. And so I'll be driving around on some of these courses, and it'll just be like, it's like literally like somebody is turning the lights on in front of you as you come up the road.
Yeah.
And so it can be very, very odd. Other tracks, I don't necessarily get it that much, but then you know how like in Nepal, like in Uncharted 2 or whatever, they have like these little flags that are kind of hanging everywhere, like these strings of flags. There was one track where I was on where it's just like somebody just like sketching across the sky as these flags drew in as I was driving up, and I'm like, okay.
Weird.
And
maybe you're just too fast, Bloodworth.
Some of the reflections can look a little weird and stuff like that, and there's some really weird flickering. So it's just strange for like a game that's like, we're trying to push these next gen features and elements, and then seeing like some of the same like old kind of chunky stuff from racing games in the past.
Has it? You mentioned it being distracting, but is it distracting to the point where it's like, oh, that caused me to like screw up this turn or something?
No, it's not that. It's not that bad. It's
Okay.
just certain courses. It's just one of those things that it becomes hard not to notice, particularly when it's a thing where like lights are coming on to things that you're driving up towards. And then some other stuff that is I'm surprised not to see is there's not like any kind of there's a lot of mud, but there's no terrain deformation whatsoever. Like you don't leave like any like thick tracks as you go, and like that's stuff that was like in like
Weird.
Sega Rally and like the 360, you know.
Yeah.
And in like a lot of the motocross games. So it was odd for me not to see that. It's odd for me to see like some of the features that Codemasters generally has in dirt games, like replays and like rewind.
That stuff is super basic, yeah.
Not present in this game. So yeah, so I feel like I'm being like on the like more negative side right now, but it's oh, and then I have to say the other thing that's really strange to me is that there are a lot of different quote unquote styles of racing in the career as you go through, and you can kind of like as you go through you can start sort of favoring which ones you like. You don't have to do every single race. They kind of branch out. But out of all of those styles, none of them are just a rally course. It's a dirt game without any rally. And it's like, I know they have 2 rally focused games, but it's still strange for a numbered dirt game to not have any rally representation whatsoever in it, and it's just, there's point-to-point races and circuit races and these really cool races called icebreakers, which you're sliding around on like a frozen river, and the presentation on it is really nice. You can kind of see like the translucent through the ice and cracks and things like that, and it's kind of has like this slushy, dangerous sort of feel to it. And those feel really nice because you can, you've got to learn how to make the slide work to your advantage rather than your disadvantage. So it can take some practice to get that down, which is something that I feel like a lot of the other courses don't really have to them. I'm about ready to start bumping up the difficulty because there's so many courses where it's just like, all right, I get the first place in the first half of the first lap and then just drive the course. And yeah, it's, oh, and then the other thing that's kind of, I'm really split on right now, but mostly not digging is there's a lot of this, like, they've gone out of their way to create like this podcast commentary that happens between races and before races. And a lot of it in the beginning has just been like really bad jokes that don't hit. they don't land. But then I did like one of these like one-on-one kind of showdown events, and after that these guys just started going off on commentary, and even though they were like referencing these races and these drama and stuff that like I didn't see happening like in the gameplay or in any kind of cutscenes, by the end of this 5 minutes I felt like I started to know what they were talking about, because it just felt like a legit podcast talking about these racers and these drama and like what's going on here, and it really felt like they were commenting on a real like sporting event, like a real racing series. And
are you just sitting there listening while that's
happening?
happening?
You're just like sitting there looking at the menu, and they're just like talking and talking and talking. I'm like, okay.
Oh wow.
Like, this is not really a story. but I'm starting to get familiar with the people that they're talking about, and their conjecture and their predictions for where the season's going to go and all of this stuff in a way that feels kind of legitimate and authentic, even though without that, like, you wouldn't see any. You're just racing courses,
This could just be a me problem, but like I'm playing Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, just getting started on that, and something that always kind of annoys me about Muso games is as you're fighting, characters will be talking and it won't be voice acted. And so it's like, well, okay, I'm fighting in the center of the screen and dialogue is happening in the bottom left. And just, I feel like there's so much I miss, or I just completely tune it out. And in this, like, if I'm looking for something in the menu or my brain's focused on that, I feel like I would tune out what these people are saying, or the opposite, like get so focused that I'm just kind of like sitting there, not really engaged in anything. I don't know. It just sounds a little bit awkward.
Yeah. Well, most of the time it is just like kind of a race intro that you would, typically, in the past, in the older systems, it would just like, okay, well, they're loading the track now anyways, and it's not that long. This was really kind of the exception to where, like, not only was, it much lengthier, but I wasn't looking at like a course or anything. I was just, sitting there in the menus listening to this podcast. But at the same time, it felt more valuable than any of those other things that had happened before it, because that was just like groan-worthy, jokes and dialogue and like making fun of themselves in a way. Like, why are you here if, you're just going to act like this thing that is terrible. Like, I don't.
This sounds so weird because it, like, not having like super nuts and bolts features, plus, I don't think you're saying like they've added enough new stuff that makes up for that. Like, it just kind of sounds like a disappointing sequel. Like, I don't know why you would gravitate towards this.
Yeah, it does. I mean, in a weird way, like, it does feel like a launch game. It's like, to put it simply, it feels like a launch game.
Sure.
And like a more basic arcade racer. And there are some courses that I really dig. But then there are others that are just like, the tracks are so wide that you don't have to think too much about getting around them. And the AI is so easy that it's like, okay, I'm ahead, and I just do my 3 minutes and move on to the next race. So it can be like I said, it can be a little bit of a back and forth for me in terms of how I feel about it one moment to the next. And so it's really going to take me getting through this whole career to kind of nail it down and see how I feel about it overall.
And how long is that process?
Of getting through the whole career?
Yeah, like what's it?
I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I'm not doing a good track. I haven't really kept track of time too well.
But like if you had to give a guess, like in other dirt games.
Because it's been a while since I played a numbered one. I don't think I played 4, and 3 was so long ago. But I would guess it would be like 15-ish hours. But I mean, racing games are hard to, like, that's the way I like don't even think about hour counts, because you rerun things because
Right.
I got 3rd place or 6th place, or I totally screwed this up. So
Blood, it's
How Long to Beat says 9 hours for main plus extra on Dirt 5.
we have such different perspectives on racing games, because I feel like I'm in the fortunate position where racing games for me are just something like whenever I feel like it. Like, oh, if I get an itch for like a Burnout or a Forza Horizon, not Forza, Forza Horizon.
it is Forza.
Is it Forza? Because
Yeah.
It's not Forza.
It's a Z, but yeah, it's Forza, like pizza.
Whoa.
Okay. Now I'm going to be self-conscious about it. But yeah,
I think either way is fine.
It's something that I can just play so casually, and I don't have any expectation on myself of like, I've got to see all of it. And it's just so interesting because I feel like you have played through their entirety so many racing games over the years that I can imagine like what you're looking for or what's interesting to you is just way different than something that I'm looking forward to, because for me, like, the number one thing is accessibility. Like, how quickly can I hop into this racing game and start having a good time, because I'm not going to be around that long. Whereas you're
Yeah.
like, all right, well, how long is this? How many features are there? And I just, it's interesting to have that perspective. And it's something that I wish we could account for more in reviews, where, like, a lot of times when we play games, we're playing games as huge fans of something, right? So if, you know, I'm reviewing like a JRPG, it's like, well, I'm reviewing this because I love this genre, and so I have certain expectations. I wish we could get like another perspective where it's like, I don't play JRPGs at all, and I think this is bullshit. Just to, I guess, speak to a wider audience of people, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe, you know, again, it being, you know, a launch game, like, kind of goes into that, where, like, I do think that the numbered games, they're trying to hit that wider audience, you know, and, like, Rally, and I think that's why it's kind of hard to, like, put the two back to back, because Rally is very intense. You know, it's like you damage your car, and then that damage is going to stick with you, or you're going to have to pay for that damage, or, you know, take time to repair it between races, and you have a lot more things to deal with, and the tracks are crazy narrow and bumpy, and you have to, like, take every corner very perfectly and precisely, you know. And so then it's weird to come into Dirt 5 and it's like, here's this giant space that, you know, you don't have to get around particularly well, and you can still stay ahead. And it's not true of every track. Like I said, the icebreaker ones have pushed me a little bit more, but a lot of the time it's not pushing me. And I think that's essentially what it, you know, comes down to, is like, okay, well, am I going to bump up the AI to push myself? Because personally, I don't feel like I care that much about the AI itself. I care about getting around that track. The track is the challenge to me. And so the AI kind of is just sort of a marker of how well I'm doing. And so bumping up the AI doesn't necessarily make it more satisfying to me a lot of the time, because, you know, I'm trying to get the most out of that course. And if that course isn't challenging on its own, then bumping the AI doesn't do as much in the long term.
Ian.
Hi.
Tell me about Ord. O-R-D.
Ord.
That's fun to say.
Yeah. This will be very brief because it's a very interesting, short, little, funny, weird game. And I mean, I'm aping content from my own easy update right now to talk about this kind of, but ape it. It's a text adventure game that only does usually 3 words at a time. So it says, like, alarm, wake, sleep, and then you pick wake or sleep, and then, like, the next thing will happen. And it's a very interesting idea. I kind of liked it. I saw one review that was like, hated it because they were like, this is trash. Like, it takes out all the fun of a text adventure because there's no substance. It's just the ideas. And I'm like, this is great. It's all my own imagination. And it's telling me literally the bare minimum, because it'll just be like, bridge over, under. And if you go under, you might get killed by a troll. And if you go over, you just are fine. And so it's kind of and there are different themed stories you can do, but there's like a dungeon crawling one, and sort of the exercise of the game is you learn which responses trigger which endings or kill you in which way, and then you just try to make it through. So it's kind of just like a choose your own adventure book, because once you remember, like, going under the bridge is bad, you just don't do that next time. But yeah,
is it that binary where it's like, you chose this, you died, go back to the beginning, remember?
Not always, no. If you die, it just says end, and then, yeah, that story is done and it starts over, or you can go back to the menu and do a different story. But a lot of times you can go on, like, branches, you know, like, and it randomizes, I think, sometimes. I did the dungeon one like 4 or 5 times in a row because it only takes like 5 minutes or less. And I was playing it on the Switch, and then I got it on my phone also. But But sometimes it would take me through a town. Sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes I would, encounter a dungeon right away. Sometimes it was later. Sometimes I would go through a forest. Sometimes I wouldn't. And not every choice is like, this is the one that kills you. This is the right one. Some of them are just like funny, or whatever. I haven't seen like getting an item or anything. Like I haven't encountered like having an inventory or anything like that, like in certain text adventures. So I'm not sure if that happens. But yeah, it's very sparse design wise. It's got sound design. The text treatment does change sometimes. Like going into the dungeon, it says like dungeon, dark, scary. And the text gets like gray instead of white,
So when you choose these options, it's not like you see a scene play out. It just goes to the next.
It's just text. But like when it starts to rain at one point, it says like downpour. You can see rain going over the whole screen. And then when you get to like the Warlock's tower, it's kind of cool. It looks kind of cool. The rain effect turns black and is only on the words and not on the whole screen.
Yeah.
It's just little things like that. But I mean, yeah, it's a bite-sized game by design. But yeah, it came out on the 25th of October, I think, and or something like that. And it's cute. I don't know. It's just a fun, weird little thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of sounds like nostalgic almost because, and I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but when you say text adventure, the things that you're describing, I feel like are as stereotypical of the genre that you get, like a troll under a bridge or a dungeon or a dark and stormy night. Like these are all things that come into mind when you think of like classic text adventure things. Do you feel like that is deliberate? Is there some surprise in store? Does it kind of subvert your expectations? Or
there's definitely some surprise. Like there was like a sex joke in the dungeon one at one point. And I was like, oh, okay. All right.
Bump it up for those jokes.
Bump it up. But like I said, there are multiple different stories. So like the dungeon one is by design very traditionally a dungeon crawler kind of a thing like that, a fantasy story. But there was another one I tried called Dimensions.
Oh wait, so there are multiple adventures that you can choose?
Different adventures you can choose, and they're authored by different people. So I think that if or like different game studios or whatever make different ones. So I think their theory probably is that they'll add on, I don't know, packs or stories or have community content.
How many
or something. I don't know.
are there out the
they
gate?
could do that. I want to say like between 5 and 10.
Oh wow, okay.
I don't remember specifically, but you had to scroll the list a little bit to see them all. But I tried one called Dimensions that got really weird. I was like stuck in a loop just doing, like, I had a family and I had a job and I went to the office and it just kept repeating over and over again. And then suddenly eventually the phone rang and I picked it up, by just saying answer, because you could say answer or ignore. And somebody says like proposition, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like proposition, and then it was like accept, reject, or like what is it, reject, and then they say like freedom, and so like, and then you say like cost, and then it says family.
Wow.
Whoa.
And you're just like, what? And so then I chose not to like leave my family, and then it just kept repeating, and I went through a couple more loops. And then I took the deal and woke up in another reality in a different loop, just missing my family.
That's pretty good.
And so it's just like, all right. Like, so they're not all, I've only tried a few of them, but they're not all just very traditional. Like that one got very metaphysical and bizarre and kind of dark.
I think having all of those stories helps so much with the simplicity of the game. I also feel like this is a game where like weirdly price point could come into effect. Like this sounds like $10 or something like that.
Oh, I got it on sale on Switch for $3.99.
There you go.
And on the phone it was $1.99.
Wow, okay. Not a huge investment.
And it's on a few other platforms. I don't want to speculate right now and get it wrong, but it's on a few things. But yeah, cheap. And 3 words at a time. That seems about right to me.
Well, Ian, I'm actually going to have you break in a brand new segment for us,
Ooh.
replacing
no.
Best Take this week with something that I'm calling One Sentence. And so the idea of this little bit is that we're going to role play a little bit, okay?
Okay.
I am going to be an executive at a video game company. And for some reason, maybe you're just the biggest fan in the world. Maybe you have a huge following and that gives you clout. Maybe you're a rival game developer. But I've opened up my schedule just enough where you can say one sentence to me. And it could be anything that you want. It could be a suggestion, it could be praise, it could be condemnation. But all you get is one sentence, a maximum of 10 words.
Oh my.
And
wow.
the company for this first bit is going to be Square-Enix. You get to say one sentence to me. Moshi Moshi.
Yeah. Okay. Parasite Eve remake, please.
Hi.
Domo arigato.
Okay, so Parasite Eve remake, please. So you could have asked for a lot of things. You could have asked for the resurrection of Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh, that would have been better.
Hey, I'm not saying Parasite Eve remake is wrong.
Wait, I've got like 6 words left. And
Wait,
Final Fantasy
Parasite
Tactics.
Eve. Wait, Parasite
Eve remake, please.
Wait, I keep doing syllables instead of words. Parasite Eve remake, please. Yeah, okay. So that's 4. You got 6 words left.
And put Final Fantasy Tactics Switch.
There is confusion at how you phrased that last little bit. And so your message was slightly misinterpreted.
Uh-oh.
So you're going to get a Parasite Eve remake with Final Fantasy Tactics elements.
Hey, honestly, I would take it. That would be
It's a fusion of those 2 games.
That game could be awesome, actually.
Maybe you accidentally created the best case scenario.
Perfect game.
Let me know what you think of that bit. Just trying out something new. Try to come up with ideas. Yeah. Pretty short, but this one sentence bit was brought to you by some wonderful shout out to your patrons. If you would like to find out more, go to patreon.com/easyallies. And if you do sign up for this too, we will shout you out on every podcast that we have, which is quite a few of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read all these names. And then I thought, since I knew Demon Souls was going to be taking up a bulk of the episodes, can you guys do shout out like a Souls character? Now, obviously, that is very open to interpretation. So maybe while I'm reading these, try to get something in your head. I'm not sure I have something in my head, but we'll see how it goes. All right, shout out to Elthanas, Greg, TheDarkKnight Kettering, Caleb Togi Crawford, and Nick. Shout out.
Umbasa.
Shout out from the soul, trapped in life's ether.
So the world might be mended.
So the world might be... Or shout out and touch the demon inside me, bro.
Touch the demon inside me, bro.
Touch the demon inside me. Shout out inside me, bro.
Did you see that made it into the title when I put it on YouTube?
I did see that.
Oh, did you?
Blood.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny.
Blood, well done. All right. I'm going to talk about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity.
Yo.
We did not get an early copy of this, and so I'm very early on in the game, so keep that in mind. These are just sort of super first impressions.
Did you do the
I
demo and
did.
continue from there?
Yes, I did. That's
Okay.
exactly what I did.
Is that process smooth? I haven't started my full game up yet.
Yep, it's just like, hey, you've got demo save data. Do you want to carry it over? You hit yes, you're done. Takes no time.
Okay, great.
Super chill. It's great. And I was very, very, very impressed with the demo. And so yeah, I guess it's
Loved
like
it.
my impressions are tiny bit of the full game and then the demo, but the demo is just the early portion of the full game.
Right.
So anyway, but yes, I really, 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 really like this a lot. And so I'm a fan of Warriors games. I enjoy them, but this feels like a step beyond what you normally get. And I think a lot of that, and Ian, you played the demo as well. You can speak to this.
Correct. Yep.
But it's just like every new character I get, I'm like, I love you. Your mechanics are so awesome. It feels like there's enough complexity to them that when I'm killing all of these like grunts that, you know, I'm not really, the repetition hasn't crept in yet, which there's still a lot of time for that to happen. But the repetition hasn't crept in because I'm thinking like, oh, this person has these unique things to worry about and they're so cool that I want to like keep trying different things. And it will explain kind of like basic mechanics, but I feel like as you're trying out the different combinations, there's kind of things that you learn where it's like, oh, if I do this, this will go into this. And so it has that sort of wonderful discovery. And while it's not like nearly as complicated as something like a Devil May Cry or you know, a Souls game or something like that, there's a little tiny seedling of that kind of experimentation in there. And so to give you a good example, and Ian, you experienced this as well, Impa is so much fun to play. So all these characters have kind of this like active ability that you can trigger, and hers is you will like put a marking on an enemy, and if you combo it with a certain attack, you'll fill up this gauge, and as you fill up this gauge, you get these more like clones that are around you. And so, you know, it's a game where you're already killing like hundreds upon hundreds of dudes, and you just ratchet up the insanity by putting these clones in there, and they're all attacking at the same time. It's just a blast. It's just so much fun.
It's so much fun. She's a blast, yeah. And it's funny because once the way it's explained at first, I was like, it's like place a marking, and then it's like collect different markings, and I was like, what? Like, what are the markings for? What do they do? Where do I get them? And then after a while, you're just like, oh, you're just puking them out there and taking them back. It's fine. Yeah.
Sorry, my cat is crawling on me, so I'm a little bit distracted. But
one of the things I have a question on in terms of how the game works is with the different characters, how much are the missions based around a character, or how interchangeable do you take a character into? Like, do you need specific characters for specific missions, and then you can replay them with other characters, or is it just the free for all, or how does that work?
Yeah, I can't speak definitively on this, and I hope I'm not getting this wrong. But when you go into like a lot of the big missions, like the story missions, it's like, okay, you can bring in a team of 3 people. So whoever you've unlocked, you can swap in and out for those 3. But then there are It's kind of interesting because you have sort of this world map, and there are all these little things on the map, and it's like, okay, deliver, you know, these materials to me, and you'll unlock this new facility that you can take advantage of, or you can learn a new recipe, or you can get a new heart for one of your characters, or you can get a new combo move. And by doing challenges and optional stuff like that, you'll get some of those materials. And I believe some of those challenges are, you have to use this specific character in this challenge.
They're like solo levels. Yeah.
And so it's kind of the best of both worlds, where I think there's enough flexibility that you can kind of use what you want when you want. But then there are specific challenges that kind of force you to play a certain character, and they're not taxing, but you know, it's there a little bit. And that's also kind of there in the mission design, where it'll be like, hey, capture these 3 bases. And what you can do is the characters that you're not controlling, you can command them on the map to be like, okay, well, I'm going to go as this character to these 2 bases, and then I'm going to order you guys to go to these other 2 bases so we can kind of capture all 3. And once I get done with one base, I'll switch to you. And so I do feel like you're getting enough variety, or there's, you know, enough incentive to kind of switch things up. I think my only disappointment is so far the characters that I've been using are just so much more interesting than Link. Like Link,
Yeah.
but not that he isn't fun or doesn't have some cool things to him, but he just feels so incredibly basic compared to some other characters. Because I just unlocked Umbasa, and she is phenomenal. She has this lightning gauge that you build up. And the more lightning gauge that you have with your heavy attacks, you can get more out of them. Like you can do them for longer periods of time, which obviously does more damage, and obviously allows you to cleave through a greater number of enemies more efficiently. And you can time it where if you hit the button after certain attacks, you can fill part of the gauge instantly. So there's that whole element to it. And there are times where you don't kind of want to unleash all of your lightning, so managing that gauge is really important. And some Breath of the Wild elements fit so well here. So like in Breath of the Wild, when you dodge at the right time, you get the Flurry Rush. And that's really great at cleaving through stagger gauges, which will allow you to do incredible damage and take out some of the tougher enemies instantly. And like in Urbosa's case, if you do that, you get your lightning gauge instantly all the way full. And so it's just like all of these mechanics that are really fun to figure out and toy around with, but aren't so complex that they feel like you're not having immediate fun, I guess.
Well, and that immediate fun is the right phrase, because just playing the demo again, I've only played the demo so far, but I loved it. And that was the thing, that was the big takeaway from me. Well, along with one other surprising takeaway that I'll get into in a second, but it's just super fun and immediate.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect that. I thought it, because I don't traditionally like combo kind of, what is it called? Like Devil May Cry.
Sure. Like
style
character action
combat
games.
Character action game. I thought that this would be kind of more like that.
Yeah.
But with those timing things and with the different play styles and stuff, it definitely feels very active and direct to me, which I didn't expect and I really like. The other thing I didn't expect, and obviously they're very different games, but kind of similar in some ways, is I was getting from the demo like surprisingly some Fire Emblem Three Houses vibes, kind of like this, just the notion of them being kind of at war and you're managing like the map and different people and different areas and stuff.
Yeah.
And not in an annoying way. Like I got kind of turned off by that, like management in Mass Effect 3, for example. And I know a few other games have done that where you have to like juggle bars of like satisfaction in different places to keep whatever up. I don't think that this gets into that, but it didn't really in the demo. But it kind of just felt like cozy, like Fire Emblem Three Houses did to me, which I really liked also. So that was a nice surprise.
Huber said this during the Gen that was 2013 when talking about knack, but I actually think it's a phrase that fits here perfectly, and that is easy breezy. And honestly, I think that like they're just a bunch of small things that the game really nails. Again, so far, right? I do think when you're early on, especially in one of these games, you're going to be more favorable. So I'm curious if my opinion will change. But so far, just the levels feel like they last just about as long as they need to, where it's like, okay, we're going to go through this, we're going to build up to a boss, and then we're out. They haven't drug on at all. And I think the enemy variety has actually been pretty good, where like there are a fair number of different types of bigger dudes whose stagger bars you have to get through, but it's like, oh, this one has a giant sword and his attack's going to be different than this guy that like this wizard that's flying around and shooting lightning and all this stuff. And so all these things I think are just messing up with your timing and your offense, that it's really keeping it engaging. And the other layer that adds to that is super interesting is, of course, you can do like a perfect dodge and do the flurry rush, but you also have tools just like you do in Breath of the Wild, where you can chain somebody in place. Like there are certain attacks where it's like, oh, I'm going to put you into stasis to counter what you're doing, or oh, I'm going to freeze you to counter what you're doing. And there are these icons that appear above their head, and it's like, oh, this is a super smooth way to kind of implement those ideas from Breath of the Wild into this style of game. And I think there are a bunch of little things like that. So far, what I will say is, Breath of the Wild, one of the most remarkable things about it is that there is so much sort of improvisation and freeformness and openness. I'm not really getting that sense here, right? Like, nor do I really see a super strong attempt to implement a lot of that stuff. But I do think it is an interesting interpretation of those ideas into a completely different genre, for sure.
Well, and I think you're right, and I think that a lot of that has to do with how differently paced these games are. Like the combat in this is so frantic and frenetic that like meticulously guiding a metal cube across a battlefield to set it up to do a thing would not really be at home, you know. But you do get to use those same elements, and that was the thing I was surprised by, is the combat feels very much familiar, even though it's more complicated and there are different combos and stuff like that than in Breath of the Wild, but it felt immediately familiar, which I liked. And I don't know if it's... because, I mean, I've only ever played Musou games like when we've streamed them in the past, but there is a very exciting and tangible aspect to this one, and I'm certain a lot of it has to do with my familiarity with the Breath of the Wild, but it really feels very exciting to be boots on the ground in this time and place, and like moving between different struggles, and like early in the demo, Link is over here doing a thing, and then it's like Impa is over there doing a thing, and you can swap, around, and they're in different spots, and then you get the ability to like say, okay, meet me over here, kind of like in Pikmin, right? And like you can plan stuff, and it feels kind of badass to be Impa or Link or Zelda, and you're, this general or whatever kind of role. Yeah. And you're like, you can kind of like get a battle far enough that it's fine and be like, all right, the soldiers will handle this. I'm needed over here, and like go over there and handle it. It just feels really exciting.
Yeah, Ian, that is such a great point. And it's something with Zelda that is always a huge problem, where you play through these games and you think to yourself, well, what are you guys doing? Like, you're around and you show up for certain story beats, but then you just kind of peace out and you're like, you're not doing anything. And in this, Zelda is like, nah, bro, I'm coming along. Like, I'm going to mess stuff up too. And that is definitely very, very nice.
I love it. Yeah.
Something that I will say, this being a prequel for Breath of the Wild, I think that idea was really interesting to me. Nothing about the story has particularly wowed me or felt like it's taking advantage of its position in a super exceptional way. Like, there are things that they're setting up in the story that feel like, yeah, like this is how Koei Tecmo tells stories. Like, it feels a little bit predictable, and rote even in some ways. But what I will say, and if you're thinking about trying this, I do think you'll get more out of it if you've played Breath of the Wild. Just the way that they kind of present things and how things sort of appear. It feels like they're kind of positioning them in such a way where it's like you go, oh, right, it's that person, or oh, it's that thing. And that's super, super fun in a spin-off game like this to kind of have those moments.
That's kind of an interesting philosophical thing when it comes to prequels, because more often than not, I think things that are called prequels are so not prequels, even if they take place chronologically before the events of the thing you're familiar with, because it's a sequel in that it requires your knowledge of the other thing to have all the payoffs be payoffs, and I could definitely see this falling into that. I don't even know if it's a trap, but definitely I could see that this would play into that. It's funny though, because unless I have a weird spot in my memory, that mini guardian, not in Breath of the Wild.
No.
So it's really funny that they say like, this is a canon story. This is an important story, part of everything. And it starts with like a retcon, sort of. I mean, I'm assuming that the story will, and it, it's timey-wimey and it deals with things, and I'm certain that the story will address this, hopefully. But But it is kind of funny right out the gate to just be like, here's a thing that was never there 100 years ago. Like, or maybe it was. I don't know. Yeah.
That's always the funny thing with prequels when the revelation is that this thing has been there the whole time or something.
Yeah,
I feel like there's so many stories that fall into that trap. But Ian, kind of going back to what we were talking about with Demon Souls, I'm almost grateful in a way that they're presenting the story in a way that I was, because is anything more annoying than a game when it has like a mediocre story and it just spends way too long on it?
So long.
Right?
On it.
And that is not happening here. Like, everything has been really short and to the point and relatively simplistic. And again, very early on, a lot could change. I may regret my words and deeds, but I feel like it kind of like sets something up as like, this is our objective. We're going to go there. We're going to do it. We get in, we get out. And because the actual gameplay is what I'm enjoying the most, I'm kind of grateful that the other stuff is not eating up a ton of time or preventing me from getting to the part that I really care about. But
I agree. It's telling it through little setup cutscenes,
Yep.
little wrap up cutscenes, and little spats of dialogue in mission. But it's all just like, hey man,
Right.
we know why you're here. Like,
Yeah.
You're here for some cool Zelda lore stuff and to fight dudes.
Yep. But I'm actually very, very, very excited to play more of it. I think despite my criticisms, I really feel overwhelmingly positive about it. And I think there's kind of a level of production here that is really fantastic. And I don't know, I hope people play it, and I hope maybe it serves as a gateway to this type of game, because I do think they can be extremely fun under the right circumstances.
Just judging from the demo, it played a lot better than I thought it
Yeah.
would. I heard someone told me that they had heard that the full game has some frame rate issues. So maybe, I don't know, but like
I haven't experienced that
really
yet.
noticed that in the demo. Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, I was surprised at how, and I mean, maybe Dragon Quest Warriors, right?
Heroes.
Or maybe Heroes. Maybe the other Musou games do this too, because I played the Transformers one or whatever it was that we did back in the day. I don't even remember what it was, but
Gundam,
this one,
probably, yeah.
Gundam. Oh yeah, maybe probably. It really feels like you're in that world,
Yeah.
which I was surprised by. Like I thought it would feel off. I thought there'd be something about it where it's like, this feels like a weird knockoff of the thing I love. But it's like, no, this feels like I'm in the place, just playing it differently because it's a different time. So it fits.
Yeah, well, having played quite a bit of Hyrule Warriors, I always really championed that game because I liked how it put the Zelda flavor into this style of game, and I felt it was very well presented. But I feel like this is much stronger even than the original Hyrule Warriors in terms of its kind of packaging in a way. And I do think focusing kind of on a single style really helps it here, whereas Hyrule Warriors is trying to bring all of these different universes together in this super hokey storyline. Right. And I think just kind of the consistency of this one aspect of Zelda is really helping it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Blood. I am really excited for this conversation because I still don't know that much about Bugsnax.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Bugsnax, it wears its Pokemon references on its sleeve. Like you have these, charming little creatures floating about the world, singing their names, going chee poof, chee poof. And then you catch it, and your controller is like chee poof. It's like all congratulatory and stuff. But
this reminds me of the South Park Chimpokemon skit. Anyway, go ahead.
But then gameplay wise, it's not an RPG. It's not like this big, like training things up or investing in all of the Pokeballs and all this stuff. It's really about like kind of a more, in some ways it's more like Pokemon Snap, but it's not on rails, but it is first person, and you're using these different tools and figuring out, okay, how am I going to catch each bug snack, you know, and so you can scan it with your camera, and then okay, you get some hints that like, okay, it likes ketchup or it likes chocolate, or it will go into a bush and not come out if it gets spooked, and these different very simple elements.
That sounds delightful.
Yeah, and then you use the tools that you have at your disposal, and certain things you might have to combine, or you might have to find another bug snack that's in the area to kind of interact with it in some way, and it makes kind of getting them kind of a puzzle. But the thing that's kind of funny, because you know I played through the whole thing, but then I watched Kyle start it and I watched the stream team start it. Is there is so much more story going on to this game than you would expect, and it is not like a fun, jolly, happy story. These characters like have gripes with each other, and they have anxieties, and when you start out, like the main person that you interact with, nobody likes them, and they get in fights and arguments that are very uncomfortable at times. And they all look like Muppets.
Right.
And so that's interesting. And then you have this other weird mechanic that I won't get into the story side of it, but like when you feed somebody a bug snack, then like their body parts turn into that.
Yes.
And so there's this weird little like almost customization aspect of like, okay, what happens if I turn your mouth into this, or if you turn your leg into a banana or whatever. And
I'm assuming some of the puzzle solving revolves around that, where it's like, okay, we need this combination of things to get ahead. Is that accurate?
They don't. What's weird is that there's not really any gameplay manifestation to some of these parts changing.
Oh, okay.
There's story.
Some of the characters will be like, you have a mission to make this guy's arms green.
Yeah. So the
like
quest
fetch quest
will,
stuff.
Yeah. Basically, the quest will have you go out and find specific bug snacks, and it doesn't feel, most of the game, it doesn't feel too much like a fetch quest, because usually when they give you that request, it's for a bug snack that you haven't encountered before, and so it just feeds into that discovery and that puzzle solving. There are a couple of the later side quests where it's like, okay, I need you to go in this direction, and then that direction, and then that direction, to pick up things that like you've already caught before, and so then it feels a little bit more like a drag. But the ones that I'm thinking of, like, those are optional anyways, so that's not too big of a deal. There's some bosses along the way that are interesting and fun. There's a giant watermelon with a bunch of melon balls that swarm you, and you've got to bait it into a rock so that you can like pull a stalactite onto it, and until it eventually like busts apart. But yeah, I think where things get a little bit weird is just in the way some of the traps and the AI sort of interact in ways that can be sort of awkward and frustrating. And so there's a lot of like kind of having to like bait creatures out into other locations, or to get them around another creature, like save, like, you have like fire and ice interactions, right? So it's like, okay, you get something that's on fire, and so you can't catch it because it's just going to burn your trap, so you got to figure out how to put the fire out. And sometimes like trying to bait it where you want it to go results in this like kind of weird thing where it's like, okay, I put down some hot sauce, and you start walking out, and then as soon as you get like within a foot of that hot sauce, you start walking back where you came from. It's like, nope, and just like trying to like just get them to go where you want them to go can be a little annoying. And then sometimes some of the boss fights kind of amplify that. It's like, oh, I'm trying to trip you up, but you broke the thing that my trap was attached to, and so now I've got to wait for you to come around and do the whole loop again. And so stuff like that can get a little bit finicky.
I mean, you could tell me that if this is unfair because you've played it and I haven't played the game yet, but I saw my roommate play like good portions of it, the beginning, a bunch of stuff in the middle, and then I happened to see the ending, watched him finish it. And my impression of the game is that while cute and it's fun to see the bugs and hear the bugs, the act of catching the bugs can get pretty tedious, and the bosses seemed pretty tedious, and the whole like end game thing seemed pretty tedious, and the story just seemed like myself and Omar at the end of it. I was like, we kind of just sat there for a minute, and I was just like, is it weird that I'm like, this game is really depressing? Like, it's kind of just like a depressing, kind of dark. And there are a lot of things in it that are really joyous and really cool. And it's got like good, like LGBT representation in it, which I really appreciated. And it's just like, at the same time, there's just something like grody or like sad about it.
Yeah, well, and
so it
one of
seemed
the
kind
things
of
that
boring and
on
and
Kyle's
sad.
stream that he pointed out is that like some of the music is just like ever so slightly off key. Like it really plays into that very intentionally, and so
On purpose, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think there's definitely a part of that, and since you missed parts of the story, I think that you might not have gotten like there is reconciliation that comes between a lot of these characters.
I saw that.
Yeah. So I think that stuff works well but it's just like when it's in the beginning and you see these characters like come back together for the first time and still have these grudges, is like it's very real. It's very mom and dad are fighting right now, kind of uncomfortable. But in a way, I feel like it's interesting because it leads to, again, just sort of like more depth to that than you would expect.
Right.
And so even if it does get like a little bit more talky, I kind of appreciate it at times for like sort of tackling these subjects a little bit.
Yeah.
See, I started this conversation by saying, like, I still don't really understand Bugsnax, and I feel like now I'm even further in the dark than I was before, because you're talking about these really deep personal stories with good representation that are kind of uncomfortable, but then you're talking about, like, boss fights and body parts changing into different things of food. Like, it's just so clashing that I feel like I have to check it out because it just seems so bizarre.
From my experience of it, that seems to be very intentional. Like that, it's a game about juxtapositions.
Yeah.
And like kind of the tension that can cause and how you can learn to live with it.
Right.
Sort of. Yeah. But to me, kind of like what Bloodworth was saying, the thing that made me not want to play it anymore, because like when I first saw Omar playing it, I was like, oh yeah, after Demon Souls, I'm gonna jump into Bugsnax because like I loved Pokemon Snap and I'm really excited to kind of just catch these cute little bugs. But like watching him play some of those bosses and like try to catch the bugs that like the pathing AI and stuff, it just seemed like unbearable to me. It just seemed like really irritating.
Yeah, kind of mashing both of your impressions together. I think the thing that I would be worried about is one of two things happening. Either I would get really, really interested in the story and like I'd just be getting through the gameplay to see what it was going to throw at me or what themes it was going to tackle or how these characters would interact, but the actual act of going through some of these gameplay challenges was kind of tedious and frustrating. Or the opposite, where I get really addicted to like trying to catch all of these things and just run around and explore and experiment, and the story is just kind of bumming me out. Like, I don't know, both of those could be a little concerning, I guess. But Blood, since you played all the way through it and you reviewed it, do you think that clashing comes together in a way where you're like, yeah, definitely spend your time playing this?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a super long game, right? You know, it's, you know, like 8 or 10 hours, depending on how much you really want, like if you want to catch them all or not.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's worth playing through. I think it's still like, there's enough creativity there, even though like some of the bugs, you know, it's like, okay, there's the oranges and the limes and they're basically the same thing. But yeah, it is fun to come across something that you haven't seen before and that you aren't expecting, and just like,
Right.
Oh, what the heck is this thing? You know, and some of the interactions with specific bugs, it's like, I didn't know that was going to happen, you know, and so it can definitely be fun in that sense, just in the creativity of it all.
Well, and like hearing the voice acting was a highlight for me. The bugs, like Omar was, when you catch them, they say their name through the controller too. So like Omar was trying to get this thing called Scoopy Banoopy,
Yeah,
which is like a banana split, and it just keeps going like scoop, scoop, Scoopy Banoopy. And then when you catch it, it goes Scoopy Banoopy and its voice is way lower than mine.
Yeah.
Out of the controller, and it's just so funny. And then you look at, and they released a trailer, but like, it's so funny to see all the voice actors and like how hot they are.
Yeah.
And then you think about them just going like cheesy poof, cheesy poof. It's just really funny.
Ribblepeed.
Yeah.
Blood, I know you're very much a completionist and tend to be very thorough when you get glued in on a game. Did you feel compelled to kind of go and get everything? Like, did that hold up? Or did you reach a point where you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go see the story through to the end and drop it?
It worked pretty naturally for me because if I saw something, then I wanted to go for it and get it. And I was able to do that in a way that I had gotten all of the Bugsnax before I had completed the story. So yeah, I think that is pretty compelling, and there's still some little things that, like, even though like you feel like you learn all the tricks, there are a couple out there that, okay, what am I supposed to do here? Because the ways that I thought I was going to solve this aren't working. And so that can both be frustrating, but then also, nice because it's not predictable.
Sure. Ian, tell me about Carto, which just at a glance seems adorable.
Yeah.
It's great. Again, my episode this week is about like cute, relaxing games. And so I talk about this in there. I was playing this on the Switch. It's also on other stuff, but it is really cute. I've only played it for a couple of hours. I think I got to the end of kind of the first biome, if I'm reading what is going to happen to me next correctly. But man, it's such a funny little game where it's interesting mixture of linearity and your own choice playing hand in hand, because the basic gameplay loop is you find a chunk of map and it is your map, but it's also real. So if you take that little square, you can move it around and that moves things in real life. And that manifests in different ways in the game world, where like if you have a grassland next to the ocean that when you found it, you put on the east side of the island or whatever, and you talk to a character and he's like, yeah, I'm lost. My house is on the west coast of the island by the ocean. You can just go like, okay, hang on. You pause the map and you just take the chunk and like flop it to the other side of the island. And then all of a sudden a house will pop up, Or like you'll find someone will say, she's down in the big woods. And so you'll make a woods.
The big woods.
Right. You'll make woods and it's not big enough. So you go and walk through it and you're like, well, where is she? And then you realize like, well, what happens if I leave a hole with woods on either side of it, on all four sides of it, and then pops in the woods, So it's sort of like little problems, puzzles you have to solve like that. Sometimes they're a little like you just happened to walk and find the map. So there is just a little exploration to it too. But the thing that really made it shine to me is just how cute and nice the characters are. And the writing is just so dear. There's a section, my favorite section so far was you meet these like forest warden guys, not in the sense of like a ranger or something, but they're like these like mythic big burly guys, and they've all got an animal companion of different kinds of animals, and they're all from different like tribes and villages, and you're in this kind of basically like Lost Woods, like Zelda kind of like confusing weird woods area, and you have to notice different little cues in the environment to know which direction to walk, otherwise it'll just go forever. So I really enjoyed that part, but then also the story that culminates once you find like the grandmother tree or whatever is just so precious, and I really liked it. And that was around where I stopped playing it, because next gen happened and stuff, but it's just really nice, and it is pretty lightweight, happy little game. And so far I would recommend it. I haven't, beaten it or anything yet, but it's fun. It scratches a nice itch of cute story and kind of sometimes pretty thoughtful puzzling sort of in a way that you don't see a lot. Like it's because you have to oftentimes, like, you can't place a piece that has a river or a road or something not matching up with its counterpart, you know. So you can't like put a grassland on a desert. So there's still a lot of flexibility there with where you put stuff, but there is a little bit of a puzzle element. It's like those old jumble up puzzles where you have to like rearrange the image to make the whole thing, but they're all just squares, you know. It's sort of like one of those as a game, and it's really fun. You can discover some cool things. I wonder if there are like secrets and stuff too. That would be cool. Yeah.
I'm a little bit upset because you made the Lost Woods theme pop up in my head, and that's definitely something that when it's there, you can maybe it'll there. Fade away, but
just do Demon Souls theme song, and then that'll replace it.
But what I was going to say is, puzzle games are always kind of like a sticky wicket for me, where I admire them, but sometimes I reach a point where it's like, I'm just not enjoying this anymore because I'm so stuck that I feel helpless. And in a puzzle game, like looking something up feels like it just defeats the entire point of the game. And a perfect example of what I'm talking about is Baba Is You, where
I knew you were going to mention.
Yeah, I admire that game so much, and I think it is brilliant, but there are definitely points where it's like, I feel like I'm beating my head against like a brick wall. And
this, let me dispel some confusion perhaps caused by my description. This is pretty much nothing like Baba Is You. Okay. This is very light, at least so far, very light puzzling, almost to the point where like just trying stuff, you'll figure it out usually, I would say. If you're stuck, just keep trying stuff and it'll happen. And it's usually pretty logical. The one thing I would say that this game might fall into, that it almost did in the kind of the first or second kind of little area, is that you could get into some like magical thinking kind of realms where it's like, okay, I didn't realize that doing this would cause the next map piece to show up, or like I didn't realize I had to like look in this pot to get the next map piece, sure, yeah, and I wouldn't be able to move forward without it. It could fall into that trap. There were a few times where I had to like backtrack a couple of times before I found what I was supposed to find. Not to the point where I would categorize it as detrimental yet, but I could see it falling into that trap more so than Baba Is You or Talos Principle or something, where it's just like a super hard puzzle and you're like, what the hell? Yeah. They could ramp up the puzzle difficulty later. I don't know, but so far not really an issue.
Yeah, there can definitely be a very unique sort of helplessness when it comes to puzzle games. Yeah, for sure. Slash adventure games. Hey everybody, you might notice a little bit of a jump there in either the audio or video. We just took a quick bathroom break. But we have returned to Frame Trap for the HOTTAKE!
Wow.
And I know we talked about this because I was on it, the Easy Allies podcast a little bit, but Game Awards sort of feels like the thing that is happening this week. And I thought it would be fun if we, as a panel, went through and did two different things for some of the categories. We pick...
Oh, you meant happening in the news.
Happening in the news.
Really, I was like, Game
You
Awards.
you missed it. It's over. It happened. They showed Elden Ring, Ian. It was amazing.
Silent Hills was there.
Yeah, Silent Hills was there. All your dreams came true.
So many rumors for this Game Awards.
Shenmue just like 4 was just shadow drop.
Your expectations.
But yeah, what I thought we would do, the Game Awards have not happened yet, but the nominees came out this week. And so what I thought we'd do for some of the categories, not all of them, I'm not going to do ones that I feel like we have no input on, like Content Creator of the Year or like esports stuff. I just don't think we can...
Did we make it into that one yet?
They call us the People's Champ when it comes to esports.
Oh, okay.
No, we just don't know enough about some of these things that I'm not even going to waste our time doing it. But for the rest of them, what I'm going to do is... each of us individually, I want you to say what you think is going to win and then what your personal pick is for the category.
Oh my.
Now keep in mind, panelists and audience, we're not on the hook for this. This is just a fun frame trap thing that we're doing.
It's just a fun frame
So
trap
if
thing we're
we
doing.
change our minds when it comes to Game of the Year, don't hold this against us. We still got a long time before Game of the Year, Easy Allies. At Easy Allies happens.
We do ours next year.
Yeah.
Everyone,
We do ours-
stop asking.
We do ours
A
next
lot of these
December.
games that I haven't played yet, for sure.
No, not really, but yeah. So the first category that I'm going to do is best debut game. The nominees are Carrion, Mortal Shell, Raji, Roki, and Phasmophobia.
I mean, probably Phasmophobia is going to win that.
Do you think Phasmophobia is just going to win just due to the kind of
'Cause it's
sensation?
popular.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally see that,
Yeah.
but I would actually... I don't have experience with some of these games. I don't have experience with Raji and Ancient Epic or Roki, which I know, Blood, you're really a fan of. Roki in particular. But I would actually give it
Roki could take it. Yeah.
to Phasmophobia because, I haven't had much experience with it outside of the stream, but I think it is just such a phenomenal idea and was so much fun to go through. It's it's a game I feel like you kind of have to work around for sure. Like just
It's jank as hell.
yeah, jank as hell is a very succinct way of putting it. But I think through that jankiness, once you kind of understand how it works, it's so much fun hunting ghosts, and I think it actually does do a pretty effective job at terrifying you. So that'd be my pick. And I do think it's going to win. I think you're probably right, Ian.
Yeah, I'd say Phasmophobia or Roki probably has the best.
I
shot
think
at it.
Carrion has the best.
Really? Why do you think Carrion?
Really, Huber really didn't like it.
Right, but it seems like he's more of an outlier. I need to play it myself to see what I think. But I feel like overall, because what is it also in best indie game too, which I thought was a little bit strange. And so I think that it's got the leg up here. I don't know that Mortal Shell's gotten that much attention. Raji has kind of got mixed reviews. Roki is fair but somewhat mixed reviews. And Phasmophobia, like you said, is another one. It's big hot stream games, but I don't know that the critic group has gotten into it in that way. So
But do they even matter?
Well, they're the ones that are voting.
Yeah,
for the
that's
most
true.
part.
That's
Yeah,
true.
so-
They do matter. And in the way that I framed this, yeah, they absolutely do matter. I know Huber wasn't super hot in it, and I haven't played all of it, admittedly, but the time that I've spent with Carrion, I've actually really enjoyed it. I think it's a pretty neat game.
Yeah.
So you think Carrion's going to win. What would you pick, Blood, if it was up to you, and solely up to you?
It's honestly a hard one. I think I would need to play Carrion to see what I think of, to really dive into my thoughts on that game. Because like you're saying, Phasmophobia is a cool idea, but it's kind of messy. It feels like you need somebody to walk you into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I maybe this is cutting it too much slack, I suppose, but I feel like that's kind of inherent to the category, where it's I think best debut in some ways to me kind of hinges on the quality of your idea rather than being this super polished, put together package.
But yeah, I did really enjoy Roki too, and I think
tell me about
Roki
Roki, because yeah, nothing's coming to mind about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just more. I mean, in some ways, it's more of a straightforward adventure game, but it is gorgeous and it tells a nice, neat story. And I think in some ways it could maybe be one of the more traditional of the group, but I think everything it does works pretty well. And in terms of just interacting with that world and this kind of the mythos that it gets into.
Next category we're going to talk about is Best Multiplayer, and the nominees are Animal Crossing New Horizons, Among Us, Call of Duty Warzone, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, and Valorant.
I want to say Among Us kind of for the same reason that it's
right,
a big phenomenon. I would love to say New Horizons, but the multiplayer is a little clunky in that.
Very clunky, yeah.
But on the other hand, it saved us this year,
Yeah.
kind of. So
Yeah, New Horizons is a very uniquely 2020 game.
Right.
Talking about phenomena, like obviously Phasmophobia definitely blew up, but not at the level of Among Us. Like Among Us, like shot up in a crazy way, and there have been breakthroughs beyond that as well. Like Fall Guys really blew up, Valorant really blew up, Warzone has just been consistently popular as well. So I think in terms of recognition, they all have something going for them to varying degrees.
It's funny to think about the group of people that will be voting on this, because it's like groups sort of like us and like also way bigger than us. But like, are they going to go with Among Us because it was good for streaming and really fun and whatever? Or are they going to say like New Horizons because it's, you know, cute and kitschy and fun? Or like, are they way more just like Call of Duty people because like they've got the numbers, you know? Right. Like, I don't know.
I think Among Us is going to take it, and it's probably what I would give it, because just looking at these nominees, I think the way it relies on being social is very, very, very fascinating. And I don't think it's something that a lot of multiplayer games really capitalize on very well. Like I think about all the multiplayer games I play where I'm really not necessarily talking to anybody. I'm just kind of queuing into a match. And it's like everybody understands how to play and they kind of go for it. Whereas Among Us, you can't play it unless you talk to each other. Right. And it changing so much depending on who you play it with is really fascinating as well. Not that I don't think highly of these other games. I certainly do. But I think Among Us is pretty unique.
Yeah, I think Among Us has a pretty good shot to be the, you know, at least right now being the current hotness, being so huge, you know, getting a lot of people into it, and the, you know, again, it requires a big group of people, so just like it creates this phenomenon of like these, you know, cross streamer events. But I think in terms of where I would probably lean in terms of multiplayer might be Fall Guys. I think that it similarly blew up, even though that's cooled down a bit,
right?
Since season 2 came out. But I think that the stuff that they're doing in that game is really different and unique, and there's not really anything I could point to that's like that, you know, even though it's inspired by like some TV shows and all of that kind of thing. Like you can't really play anything that's like this, you know. And it's really easy to jump into. You don't need like somebody to tell you what all the rules are or anything like that. You've got pretty addicting goals to strive for, and like even stuff like the cosmetics feels like worth pursuing a lot of the time. And rewarding, and I just I think it's a really good game to just hop into whenever you've got a free 10 minutes, and you know, whether you're playing with people that you know or not, it really works in a lot of different contexts.
And it's kind of the iteration on a popular theme that I love to see, you know, like we saw battle royales blow up, and then they were like, what if we did a battle royale that's not about shooting,
right?
That's about like the aggro crag.
It completely.
And I like that kind of iteration.
It completely sidesteps the feeling that I get with so many battle royales, where it's like, yeah, I've already played this. Like I'm not thinking that when I play Fall Guys. Totally. Next category is Best Sim/Strategy Game. The nominees are Crusader Kings 3, Desperados 3, Gears Tactics, Microsoft Flight Simulator, and XCOM Chimera Squad. I think some great nominees here.
Yeah, there are some. Crusader Kings 3 and Desperados 3 are so good.
I haven't played any Desperados 3 yet.
Desperados 3 is phenomenal.
Yeah,
I haven't beaten it, but it's very
That's
good.
What multiple allies have said. This is kind of a frustrating category for me, because I've dabbled in several of these games, but I haven't played all the way through them. But what I would say is, out of the ones that I've dabbled with, I definitely found Crusader Kings 3, I think, the most fascinating. I've only just touched the surface of it, but that's one that I look on this list and I'm like, man, I really want to play more of that. Like my time with it was kind of just surprising and interesting and overwhelming for sure. But I think it is a mountain that I'd be willing to climb.
I think that you've inadvertently explained why the winner will be the winner. And I think the winner will be Microsoft Flight Simulator because I don't think any of the other games have the numbers. I don't think that enough people will have played the other ones.
I do feel like there's been some buzz for Desperados 3 that maybe it would win, but I could see where you're coming from with Crusader Kings 3, that it people just won't have the people that are voting just won't have the experience with it.
Right.
But I know you think highly of Crusader Kings 3 with the time that you spent with it.
I enjoyed it a lot. I also it's daunting.
Yes, it is. Like, it is very daunting.
It's probably more accessible than previous entries. And I've got a friend, Yuli, who betrayed me once, who loves this series. And he was so jazzed on 3. And so it's good to see that it kept fans happy, as far as I could tell. I mean, I didn't like go on forums or anything. But I enjoyed what I played of it and then didn't really go back because I was just like, if I got into this, it would eat up weeks of my time, you know, and I just don't have that kind of time right now. Same with Desperados 3, honestly. I wanted to finish it and I haven't yet, but.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing to me of this category is what tends to happen when you have split categories is you have one sim.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. You have 4 strategy games.
It is a frustrating combination of things here for sure.
Like, it's very easy to compare XCOM to Gears Tactics, you know, like that's they're building off the exact same bones,
right?
Flight Simulator is an entirely different thing altogether.
Very true.
And not even really a video game, you know, it is a simulator. So yeah, I definitely think so that Flight Sim has gotten a lot of the attention this year. And while I've seen comments pop up on the rest of these games, I feel like Flight Sim would probably be the one that goes with it. And it's you know, I mean, it's on, and for me, it's honestly the only one that I played other than like 10 minutes of Gears Tactics for the Xbox stuff.
So you both think Flight Sim will probably win?
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
And then
my personal pick would be Desperados.
I don't know if there's any PC that can run Flight Sim yet, so that's saying something.
Blood, what would your personal pick be?
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying too. Is like, because I haven't even touched most of these games, like, and Flight Simulator, you know, pulled me in pretty well.
Yeah.
And beyond what I would even expect. You know, I just got into that because we were doing a video on it, and then like, oh, I'll put some more time in. This is cool. This is relaxing. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of agree. I don't feel like I've put in enough time on any of this stuff to really make a strong, definitive statement. I wouldn't be surprised if either Desperados 3 or Crusaders Kings 3 were my favorite out of any of these, but I don't know for sure. Let's see. Do you guys have any strong feelings on fighting games?
Not beyond what we've already talked about in the podcast. Yeah.
It would just be
weird category this year.
It would just be me then. So let's move on.
I would vote for Under Night In-Birth EXE Late CLR just on the title.
Okay. I would vote Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. I wonder what do I think is going to win fighting game?
Probably Mortal Kombat.
Probably Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, it's so weird with this. I don't know.
It's a bit of a populist race, the Game Awards.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's always where my mind goes to, is like, what's the most popular thing? All right, best role-playing game. This is an interesting category. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Genshin Impact, Persona 5 Royal, Wasteland 3, and Yakuza Like a Dragon.
I mean, how does Final Fantasy VII not just take this because?
Yeah.
Right. Even though I think that Persona 5 and Yakuza give it a run for its money or maybe are better. And then, of course, there's the Genshin Impact, just like popularity argument. But I mean, like, it's Final Fantasy VII Remake. Come on. Like,
yeah. I really enjoy what I played of Wasteland 3 as well. But I think my argument, I think Final Fantasy VII Remake wins because I bet the people voting, that's the number one thing they have experience with. But what I will say is, like, this is kind of a weird category, and I think Yakuza Like a Dragon definitely does give it a run for its money. But for as good as Persona 5 Royal is, and for as much as the update adds, and I haven't even seen a good deal of it, but what I've played of it has been very impressive. It is an upgraded version of an already fantastic game, and so that is difficult to compare it to. And Wasteland 3, while really, really good, I think it is just sort of building off classic CRPG stuff in an effective way, whereas Final Fantasy VII Remake is just so weird and wild, and I think really out there for a remake, and how it kind of interprets this game that is so entrenched in video game culture. Like, both, I think it's going to win, and I would probably give it to Final Fantasy VII Remake for just its boldness.
To put it this way, and like this is a trap that awards shows often fall into. We've said that phrase so many times this episode. But like, one of these games is also nominated for Game of the Year.
Right.
And all the other ones are not. Like, kind of tips your hat a little bit.
Right. Yeah, that's
usually.
True. That's true.
Not always,
I
but usually.
I think it's almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
What do you think, Blood?
I don't think I have anything different to say on that.
Sure.
It seems to be the obvious one all around.
Best Action Adventure. Nominees are Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Ghost of Tsushima, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, that's a mouthful, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and The Last of Us Part 2. The description for this, because I think action adventure can be very nebulous, but the description for this category is for the best action adventure game combining combat with traversal and puzzle solving.
By that description, it changes things.
Right, doesn't it?
By that description, it's almost like...
Including puzzle solving gets
including
a little
puzzle
weird.
solving.
Yes.
Including puzzle solving makes it like down to Ori, Star Wars, and kind of Miles Morales, sort of, and like kind of not the other three.
Yeah.
That I've never liked the action adventure category just because it's so broad and weird.
Right.
Like, in what world are Ori and Last of Us Part 2?
Right.
Like, you know, like going up against each other.
Well, was it? Yeah, they don't have shooter anymore, right? They just have action is basically where they put shooters.
Oh.
So yeah, I think that might have been the thing where like Last of Us would have been in a shooter category of some kind.
They should have like an overwrought sanctimonious
Yeah, and that's what's kind of strange
section,
too, because it's
then...
like there's definitely adventure-ish elements, but if you look at Last of Us compared to the rest, like the rest of the games all kind of give you a bit more freedom to go back and forth to different areas, you know, go back, revisit areas throughout the game. Whereas
and they've got jumping.
And Last of Us is, you know, there's very broad, big levels, but you get through and then, okay, now you're on to the next part, the next chapter.
This is a tough one. Like, I would probably give it, and I haven't even finished it, I would probably give this to Ori and the Will of the Wisp.
I would give it to Ori and the Will of the Wisp. Nice.
But it's really weird because trying to think of what the voting majority would give with this weird swath of games, and all of these games are very popular. Like, so I could see it going to Miles Morales, Last of Us, or Ori are probably the three most likely.
I disagree. And here's my argument. I think it's going to go to Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh. Interesting.
Here's why. I don't think Ghost of Tsushima will win Game of the Year.
Anything else?
Right. I don't think it will win Game of the Year, but I think it is well received enough and liked enough that people want to give it some recognition. So I think they'll give it a vote here, and that's where it will go to.
I think you're right, because of these games, Ghost and Last of Us are the only ones nommed for Game of the Year too. So,
Blood.
Yeah.
Who do you think the voters are going to give it to, and who would you give it to?
Yeah, so this one's a hard one for me in terms of personal, because I played 2 of the 6. I've played Ori and Last of Us, and I would potentially lean towards Ori in terms of my personal pick.
This crew has good taste. Play Ori, y'all.
But yeah, I think Ian's point it's interesting because it brings into that psychology of how different people approach awards. Mm-hmm. Because I think there's the camp that is like, okay, well, if we're voting something as game of the year, then we need to be quote unquote consistent and vote for the same thing.
I hate that argument.
Yeah, I do
when
too.
it goes up against another game in another category. And then there's the opposite of that, to where it's like, well, I gave it the nod here, so I'll give something else the nod over here, so everybody wins a little bit.
Which is also kind of dumb.
Right. But I also, it's so weird because I think you can have something excel in one particular area, but not be the best overall game of the year. Yeah.
Like something could be the best action. Well, this is a dumb category, but like something could be like the best role-playing game and not the best game. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, or whatever. Any example of that? Pick your category.
Let's do best action. So for the best game in the action genre, focus primarily on combat. Okay. Doom Eternal, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, Neo 2, Streets of Rage 4. It's actually really nice to see Streets of Rage 4 get a nomination. The reason why I hesitated there is I definitely think for every other game on this list, you can totally say like, yes, it is primarily focused on combat. I don't know that you could say that for Half-Life Alyx. Like
that's what I was like, what?
Too,
yeah, like combat is definitely something you do a lot of and is a key part of that game, but it's more like action adventure-y. There's more pieces to it stitched together than
I'd say like looking around is the main thing that you do.
Well, if you compare, I mean, and I haven't played Alyx yet, but just my perception of it, if you compare Alyx to The Last of Us Part 2, to me they're more similar than
they're way more similar.
Yeah, than either of any of the other games in these categories.
Also nice to see Neo 2 get some recognition as well.
Yeah, and no chance in hell that it'll win, but to me it seems obviously down between Hades and Doom Eternal, and then I guess Half-Life Alyx because it's awesome, but like again, I don't see it fitting into this category, so it's kind of strange.
I think, and rightfully so, Hades is a critical darling, and I think Hades will probably win.
I think
almost
it'll win a lot.
Every category that it's a part of.
I think you're probably right.
Half-Life has not been. It's not in the main game of the year though, is it?
No, and it's a crime.
No.
Yeah, so again, if we think of that philosophy, if people are gonna give things
Hades
nods
and
where
Doom
they can,
are both in there.
Yeah, they would give it to Half-Life here.
Maybe,
but I could see it going to Half-Life or Hades. I do feel like there
is a best VR AR, which Alyx will win.
Yes,
no question.
Yeah, like it's almost not worth discussing that category because it's so obvious.
It's nothing in Half-Life. Yeah.
I do think that there are some people that are not feeling Doom Eternal.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of push. I adore the game, and I think it is one of the best games of the year. But there's been a ton of pushback to it. People disappointed.
I think Hades will take it.
Yeah. Maybe not a ton. Maybe a ton is an exaggeration, but definitely some amount. Okay, let's. Oh, okay. Let's do best ongoing. I always think this is interesting. So awarded to a game for outstanding development of ongoing content that evolves the player experience over time. We have Apex Legends, Destiny 2, Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, and No Man's Sky.
This is really interesting because I feel like my immediate two were Destiny and No Man's Sky. Obviously, those are the two of these 5 I play.
Right.
But No Man's Sky made big strides. I feel like it's made bigger strides in earlier years, so I don't know if this year it would go to that, though they did put out some cool stuff this year.
I think that
makes
some
they did a
sense.
big next-gen update that I'm curious.
Right. Like, I have wanted to dive in on my PS5 eventually and just, like, skittle around. But, yeah, I'm less familiar with Apex and Warzone. But Fortnite always has banging stuff going on, and I assume those two do too. Destiny 2 put out a real big, Beyond Light expansion this year,
right.
So that might give it the edge. Though I feel like Destiny 2 might kind of just have like the Destiny 2 people, And I don't know how many of the voters are in that group. I don't know. Maybe that's not right, but
I don't care about it, but I feel like Fortnite really hasn't slowed down, and I do feel like they are adding new stuff to that constantly and doing very big crossovers or events or something.
Yeah,
like,
the events I think is what really getting the
Yeah.
attention.
yeah. I don't think I'm qualified to have a
Fortnite might take
personal pick, but I wouldn't be surprised if. I guess I wouldn't be that surprised if any of these took it, but I have to wonder if Fortnite clinches it.
Fortnite seems to, because didn't they do this stuff with like watching the movies this year, and
yeah, that's a good point.
I think that just the crazy out of the box stuff that they've been doing is probably going to get
Concerts
the
and
nods.
stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a very 2020 thing, and like adapting to the year. I think you're probably right.
Best performance awarded to an individual for voiceover acting, motion, and or performance capture. Our nominees are Ashley Johnson as Ellie, Laura Bailey as Abby, Daisuke Tsuji as Jin Sakai, Logan Cunningham as Hades, and Naji Jeter as Miles Morales.
Just knowing the way that they might vote, it's hard to see it going to anything other than Ashley or Laura.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Of the two, I'm not sure, honestly. Like, I thought Abby's character I liked more. And has maybe a more interesting, actually has a character arc.
What's interesting about
yeah.
this category is I'm not sure that some of these would be the nominees that I would choose.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
out of this list, I think Ashley Johnson as Ellie resonated the most emotionally with me. I do really like Abby as well. And
I think Ellie has the best chance at winning it, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, and it's interesting because I do wonder if this influences it, where there's already so much attachment to that character, right? And you're just continuing the story rather than it being a debut. I do think it makes it a little bit harder. Any thoughts, Blood?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Laura Bailey has a pretty good shot at doing it too. Like, as Ian was saying, I think it could go to either one of them. But I think it's just part of the nature of that game and what they're doing and what they're making the actors do. It kind of stands apart, right? Like, when you have that level of motion capture and that kind of intensity in the scenes,
yeah,
like, it's hard to compare because none of these other actors are being pushed that way. You know, it's kind of like when you go back when we were talking about the Dirt podcast, right? It's like, great, they've got big actors doing this stuff, but they're just reading dumb jokes and you know, it's like, it doesn't matter how good they are if they don't have the content to show it off. And so I really think that that's sort of where this comes down to. Is like, yeah, the Last of Us is just telling a story that lends to pushing the actors to do these kinds of things more than the other games. I haven't played Miles Morales, so I don't know. There could be more to that that I'm not aware of. Morales.
Hopefully this weekend. There's a lot of other interesting things to talk about. Best audio design, best score on music, best art direction, best narrative, all these things that I think are worth talking about. But I want to give us plenty of space to kind of focus in on Game of the Year here. Because, you know, it's the one that really sticks with people, I think. For obvious reasons, the nominees here are Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and The Last of Us Part 2.
So of these, I don't think that Ghost or Doom have a real shot.
I don't either.
No.
The other four, FF7, Hades, Animal Crossing, and Last of Us, I wouldn't be surprised necessarily if any of them took it. I'd be more surprised if Animal Crossing or Hades took it. I'll be least surprised if Last of Us takes it.
Yeah.
See,
because this one usually tends either Final Fantasy or Last of Us, because this one usually tends to go with just like popular.
Yeah, but that's the thing is Last of Us Part 2 is so interesting because of all the backlash that was surrounding it, and it reviewed extremely well, and it sold very well, and I adore it and think it's totally worthy of Game of the Year. But I have to wonder if that controversy switches things, like, because Hades has like no controversy. Like I haven't heard anybody say anything condemning about Hades ever, and I just wonder if that uniformity will play a part in the voting.
I just don't know if it has the scale, like the volume of players, because like everybody's played Last of Us, you know.
I think the thing about
and
Hades,
like, almost everybody's played Hades.
I think the thing about Hades though is it is easy to appreciate quickly, and I do think that it has that going for it.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, everybody. My internet went down for just a brief second. Hopefully everything is fine, and we don't have that happen again. But it was the little bump of the road. It was only out for like a couple of minutes. But Blood, you were saying.
Yeah, I think to me, Last of Us Part 2 is probably going to be the favored one among the votes, most likely. Like Animal Crossing is maybe like the thing that I think could potentially upset it, but again, as we talk about, like a lot of quality of life kind of issues and hesitations there, and the main thing for me with Last of Us is I feel like it hits on so many of these different technical categories and kind of builds up in a way, you know, like you talk like all the stuff they talked about with the sound design, what we were just talking about with the performances, the art direction, and a lot of the things on a technical level. And even though like there are some people, you know, that didn't feel how the story was told or where the story went, there are also a lot of people that really emotionally engaged with that story and characters in a very strong way. So I think it's just one of those things where it's going to be hard to compete in a sense with that full package, and there's not too many things that are going to bring it down for people.
I do think that emotional element is a big part of it, and while I greatly enjoy so many of these games on the list, like, you know, I like some more than others, but I enjoyed all of these games. I don't think any of them left narrative-wise as much of an impression on me as Last of Us Part 2 did, and I do think that does play a big part when it comes to Game of the Year is emotional resonance, which is kind of weird in a way. I do think mechanics and gameplay should factor in sometimes maybe more heavily than they do. Because I like the gameplay in Last of Us, but I don't necessarily think it is exceptional in a way that some of these other games are.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts on Game of the Year?
Well, I do want to say, like, I feel like I may have come across as cynical about the Game Awards in general, just about like the voting and the way the awards are given. And I mean, I am, but I do want to say that I really like the Game Awards, and obviously I like the announcements and stuff, and I appreciate that the Game Awards exists, even if I don't always agree with the way that the votes go, you know, but I mean, that's voting. So yeah.
Well, and too, like I would just say after, you know, we said it at the top, but at the same time, it's like, this is not right. You know, where our final votes will go. We're like half of the team here. You know, like these are just some personal conjectures where we are right now. And
I don't even think we're allowed to disclose what we vote for Game of the Year.
I don't think we can. But you know, it's a fun exercise in commentary.
When we do
basically.
Game of the Year, it's hours upon hours upon hours of discussion.
It's a bloodbath.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and even for this, we have to collect all of our opinions and then do one thing, you know? So it's like what the three of us, like Blood was saying, what the three of us think, you know, doesn't really stack up.
Are we ready for some emails?
Yeah.
I'm ready for some emails.
Our first email comes in from Brandon. Hey, everybody. Over the last couple of years, I said, hey, everybody. He actually said, hello, everyone. Funny how that...
Misrepresentation, man. I don't
Changing
know
your
about
words. Over the past couple of years, I've become a massive A passive fan of a series and genre I never thought I would. Resident Evil and survival horror. Now, I'm a scaredy cat and I don't like playing such games, but Mr. Huber and Damiani's full playthroughs of most of the numbered entries I've watched to completion, with RE2 Remake and 7 being my favorites, and I'm looking forward to the Village full playthrough. But this leads me to ask you, are there games or franchises you never want to play but enjoy watching others go through them? Whether it's because of a genre that turns you away or you enjoy watching someone who is a passionate fan share their appreciation, are there any games you like you've never played? Thank you for taking this email if you do, and stay easy, fellow allies.
The first easy answer is just like anything from the awful games block at GDQ.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Ian. I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah.
Like, obviously those are games that, like, some of them you can't even get your hands on, but like that I'm not likely to play, but just love watching. I was playing a game recently and I was like, I can't wait until I beat this so I can watch someone speed run it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember what game that was. Oh well.
I think man, there's not much that I enjoy watching that I don't also enjoy playing, but like real-time strategy kind of comes to mind, where I enjoy real-time strategy, but I just feel like competitively they play like at such a different level that it's almost like a different game. And even though I only understand a tiny fraction of what's going on, it's still really interesting, especially the efficiency with which they're able to do everything is great. So that, I don't know. Anything for you, Blood?
Yeah, I'm just kind of like looking through some of our streams, like trying to think. I don't know if there's anything that jumps out at me right away.
Mm-hmm.
There was something I was thinking of for a second, but I don't know.
I definitely like to watch like skill-based stuff when it comes to speed runs.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's not. It doesn't have to be necessarily speed runs. But yeah, things that people are just way better than I am at it. I really like that kind of stuff.
It's funny because when AGDQ was kind of blowing up, that was really my kind of where my appreciation for speedruns blossomed. And I think that's true for a lot of people. And I think early on, pretty much any speedrun was fascinating for me because the idea of like how they broke those games was just so interesting. But now I've become so familiar with speedruns that I think the commentary adds so much. Like, I don't enjoy speedruns now just on their own. Like, I kind of need someone who is also entertaining to watch and kind of brings an energy to it. It's just been an interesting shift.
Totally.
Our next email comes in from Walter. And he asks, "Compromised Gen? ? A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. We all know that expression. When I first saw the Xbox Series S, that expression came to me. I'm worried that this is cool right now because you've got a lot of retro compatibility at a really good price. But from now on, Xbox will have to make their games run on both of these machines for the entire generation. Doesn't this sound like a problem in the future? With a few games right now, you can already see the difference in power. This has the potential of becoming a nightmare for developers and is also very limiting for the first-party games because you always want to see big leaps during the generation. What do you guys think about this?"
I mean, I think we've kind of talked about it before, but I think it's easy to think in that way, and I think it's more true when a game is cross-gen than in the case of the Series S and the Series X. The Series S and Series X, I think, is more akin to having a PC and playing it on medium settings versus ultra. I think that's a more apt comparison than saying like, well, they had to make this run on this crappy thing. And it's like, well, they just made the game and then they set the specs at a different level for the different thing. Usually, I think. But I mean, PlayStation 5, they can just make it for one specific thing, you know, so that does have its advantages. They can optimize a little more cleanly maybe in some circumstances, but I think it's more like that than it is, say, for like making a game that has to run on the PS4 and the PS5, for example.
Yeah, it's hard to say because obviously some of those things are going to hold it back, but I think one of the things with the Series S is that they did focus on stuff like the hard drive, this elements that are really going to be the game changers,
Right.
For this gen, and keeping those things more in line, more in parity. And I also think that like developers in the past 10 years have gotten much better
Right.
with multi-platform. You know, like when you go back and you compare things like the PS3 versions of games to the Xbox 360 versions of games, or even like where a lot of Xbox One games were compared to PS4 games at the beginning of the generation.
We used to make whole videos about that.
Right. You know, and that stuff is still valid. There's still a lot of comparisons to be made, you know, but I think as the years have gone on, like those differences have been really less substantial and more about performance, really. You know, the resolution and the frame rates of things, and the rest of the game structure is more or less intact. So I don't know that Series S is going to hold the generation back in a significant way.
Yeah.
But it is something that we've never really seen before, and so I'm going to be curious as to how, you know, that ends up playing. You know, if like we get something like, you know, like with the people bringing like games like Doom and Witcher 3 to Switch, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like you can pull it off, but it takes them more time, and so like
You spent so long thinking if you could, you didn't stop to
Right.
think if you should.
And so I wonder if we would get in a situation where a game would come out on Series X first, and then, okay, now it's, you know, we'll work on the Series S version, or the other way around.
Well, it's funny that you said that we haven't seen something like this, because in a sense we have. This is just not backwards, but kind of early and, well, simultaneous. Because basically what this is Xbox released the standard and the pro versions at the same time.
Yeah.
Sure.
But they just did it right out of the gate, which up to this point has been unprecedented. But, you know, last generation we had this
Right.
with the PlayStation and the Xbox One.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And you already brought it up, but, you know, scalability is already so prevalent in PC games, but it's just, I guess it comes down to, what do you consider holding things back? Because with the original Xbox One and PS4, and then with the upgraded version, even with those things happening and them developing for the base versions originally, I think there was still a general progression in terms of graphical fidelity and new ideas and that sort of thing. And so I think we're also reaching this point with visual fidelity where it's already so good that it's not necessarily, I think, the thing that is always going to be pushed the most intensely. Like, the most impressive thing to me this generation so far is not how good things look, although a lot does look phenomenal. It is how fast they load and kind of the speed of things. And Blood, like you mentioned, that is already being kind of considered for the Xbox Series S. And so I think if your concern is, I want things looking as good and running as efficiently as possible, that's what the Series X is for you. But I don't necessarily think that means that games will be held back. And I think that's a broad term that can be hard to define, I guess.
Well, and also, like, kind of continuing what you were saying on is, like, because we're so early in the gen, like you said, the graphical fidelity gets better and better, as we've seen in the past, evidenced by the way generations go. Like, a game like Last of Us 2, like, probably about as far as you can push last gen consoles.
Right.
And compared to stuff that came out at launch is insane.
Right.
Right? And so, like, things being held back by the Series S is probably like a few years out anyway, because like people haven't learned how to program for these damn things like with the utmost efficiency. So yeah, but I don't think it'll be a problem. Also, they need games for this to be a problem anyway.
Right.
Like, it's all last gen games anyway over on the Xbox side of things mostly, and PlayStation kind of.
Our last email comes in from Will. Subject line: I hate this. Hey, allies. I did not get a
Me too.
I did not get a PS5. I've seen a lot of posts from companies congratulating Sony and other companies on a successful launch, but was the launch of the PS5 and Xbox Series X a success? It's not that I am wishing the failure for the two, but I just know a lot of people weren't able to get their hands on these new consoles with a ton of scalpers online, yet companies celebrate a success. Is it a successful start that they are celebrating, that the system works, UI and storefront all work? Is that considered a success? I'm just bitter at the whole thing and would like to know what you guys think. As always, love and respect. Stay up, stay safe, and press X to pet Sophie for me.
Well, the important thing to remember, Will, is like these are multinational evil corporations. Like success to them means that you didn't get one, like because everyone else bought all of them.
Right.
A failure to them would be if you or anyone could just walk into Best Buy and get one, no problem. That would be a failed launch because that means they didn't sell every single one of them. So, as always, what's in their best interest is not in our best interest, you know? They would love to have made enough that you could have gotten one. I mean, ideally, pie in the sky is they make one for every single person who wanted to buy one and no more and no less. But they don't know those numbers. So, yeah, this is a very, very successful launch for them. It's a difficult and frustrating launch for the consumer.
Well, I kind of go back to the sentiment that I expressed with the last email. And again, like success is a broad thing because like, does this launch have problems? Could some things be better? Absolutely. Totally.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that it is flawless, but I don't think flawless is the same thing as successful because I do think critically, these systems have been relatively well received and the enthusiasm for it is there. The mind share for it is there. People are hungry for this stuff. They are talking about it. And so I think on some level, yes, it is certainly a success. That doesn't mean that there aren't problems at launch, but I think if you compare this to other things like the Red Ring of Death,
yeah,
this has been somewhat smooth in comparison.
It is funny, like being lucky enough to have gotten my hands on a PS5, for which I'm very thankful. It is kind of funny the little nitpicks I'm starting to have with it now. Like right. I do like the interface, the system UI. I don't know if Blood or Brandon or somebody said it, but like I'm still holding the PS button, PlayStation button.
I do that too.
To try to get to the menu and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But also, even when you short press it, for a system that's all about fast load times, the delay for that menu to pop up is often long enough for me to think I didn't do it. So I hit it again, which then makes it go away right when it comes up. Little tiny things like that. Also, like Demon's Souls has crashed on me like 6 times, but whatever.
Yeah, it's probably crashed on me at least that much. Hopefully that'll get sorted out though.
I've noticed for me at least on the digital PlayStation 5, Demon's Souls, the only times it ever crashed or started at all was getting back to the Nexus from somewhere, or if I started the game from rest mode and it just like went right into the game, it would be really framey and weird.
That's so interesting because I didn't have those issues on PS4, but I had those kind of issues on Xbox One rest mode. So that's funny to see that kind of thing pop up again.
Yeah, I've taken to just shutting games down.
Yeah, Souls is just a game that I've always just like exited to the menu, and so I haven't.
I always do that too.
Yeah, but I haven't had any. I had one night of issues where I had like 3 crashes, like right after a firmware update on the console itself. But since then I haven't had anything. So I don't know. Weird little bits. But
it hasn't happened in a few days.
Yeah, so. I think I think that's been a success. I think there's definitely a lot to work out in terms of how to deal with a launch when most people are buying online now. It's created a real set of issues. I think the thing that Sony has going with people having to use their PSN ID to order directly from them is a step in the right direction. Because it limits how many somebody can get, but there are situations where somebody would legitimately be getting more than one system. So, that causes its own issues. So it's like there's not a perfect method, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement from what we got this time around.
Sure.
And I mean, like, obviously COVID had a huge impact on this too, but like, I would have hoped for more launch games, certainly on the Xbox side of things. I think PlayStation had a decent amount. I think PlayStation had a pretty good launch lineup, but Xbox kind of got boned by Halo Infinite not looking good enough.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean that could have gone better, but I think they still pushed units. So,
well, I think that is going to do it for this episode of Frame Trap. If you would like to send an email into the show, the email address is askeasyallies@gmail.com. Again, that is askeasyallies@gmail.com. The link or the address will also be in the description of the video and or where you listen to this, hopefully.
And it's on our website.
Yeah. And sorry for the kind of technical hiccup that we had there. Just happened for a moment, and then I don't know. It's like I almost never have problems unless I'm working on something, and then it's like now I'm gonna be unreliable. But powered through it. Thank you so much to my panelists, Daniel Bloodworth and Ian Hank. It was a pleasure having you both on. Until next time.